Grab some popcorn and a favorite chair. The love of movies is why we're here. Press play and don't delay. Let Phil be our guide to a cinematic day. Phil at the movies, from the silver screen to his podcast stream. Phil's covering every movie dream. Phil at the movies. Phil at the movies.
And hello, everybody. Welcome back to yet another episode of Phil at the Movies. I'm your host, Phil Walsh, and this is show number 162 of this ongoing podcast that is always for the love of movies. Today, if you are watching this on YouTube, you can probably tell by the background here that this is a special episode dedicated to a film that is in the news as of late. And if you are listening on any of your favorite podcasting apps, this is coming to you on May 2nd. So we're in the vicinity of May the 4th. So this is the Star Wars centric episode for the year. This is becoming a bit of a tradition here on the show. And today I am delighted to be welcoming back for the second time to talk all things Star Wars, Mr. Nolan Ryan from the Never Split Up podcast. Nolan, welcome back to the show, buddy.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Phil. I had a great discussion with you last year talking Star Wars. We did our franchise ranking, and now I'm back talking about one of my favorite Star Wars films. So I'm really excited to get into this. Thank you.
Well, that's the thing. I knew with today's topic being, of course, Revenge of the Sith, and timely with it being also the 20th anniversary, I knew you were my go-to for this discussion. So thank you again, buddy, for coming back on the show. And fair warning, everybody, this is going to be a bit of a long episode, I figure. So, feel free to take breaks as needed, get a drink or whatnot, or, go down to the local cantina and whatnot and have a pause now and again, because we are going to do a real deep dive into Revenge of the Sith. And just before we begin sort of talking about the film, let me just sort of set the stage for those of you who may be uninitiated with this particular film. This is the third installment of the prequel trilogy. This was, at the time, meant to be the last Star Wars film. It was the sixth film released overall, bringing an end to what was a 20-year project in the making. This film, of course, is the one that fans had been waiting for since 1999, and arguably before that. This is the one where Anakin Skywalker makes his descent from Jedi Knight into the Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Vader. The Republic falls, the Jedi are eliminated, and the Empire rises. This is the film that, in many ways, has grown in its following in the last 20 years. And based on the re-release this past weekend, just to put it into perspective, it was a $25.2 million weekend for this film. This is the second biggest re-release in history. On top of that, the film took in $42 million from overseas theaters, bringing its worldwide total at this point, and it's still, I'm sure the numbers are coming in, so this number will probably change, nearly $1 billion worldwide. That is, of course, coming off an initial run of $380 million in change. So I think it is safe to say that the Force is still with Revenge of the Sith. I saw it this past weekend at a sold-out theater, And it was like being back in 2005. The energy in that room, people were in costume. I mean, it was really something to experience. I have never been to a screening like this in quite some time, but it was a lot of excitement, a lot of energy, and it was just a magical moment to see Star Wars again back on the big screen, because we were sort of talking about this offline earlier. There's been a little bit of a vacuum as of late. We're now, I think, about 5 years since there's been a theatrical release of a new Star Wars film, and even putting that all aside, it's been a long time since there's been a unifying Star Wars film. So this was like being a return to the old days. People were cheering. There were laughs. There were cries. It was really an experience to experience. I have to say, and just seeing this movie again reminded me just how much I enjoyed not only this particular entry, but this entire saga as well. It is truly one that never goes out of style and out of fashion. So today we are going to do a deep dive into this. We are going back to that galaxy far, far away. So Nolan, without any further ado, I am going to turn it over to you for the moment to just give sort of initial thoughts on this film in the context of the last 20 years, and maybe even what was your first thought when you saw this film the first time?
Again, thanks, Phil, for having me on the podcast. It's a pleasure to be on. I'm really excited to talk this. My initial thoughts, I mean, we'll take it all the way back to 2005 since we are celebrating 20 years. I was 13 years old. I believe we've talked previously on the podcast my experience with Star Wars. I grew up with the original trilogy. I obviously grew up with the prequels, so I was prime age for the prequels. I went to a midnight showing. We don't do midnight showings anymore. That's a thing of the past, unfortunately. But I went to a midnight showing with my brother and my older brother and all of his friends. We didn't dress up, but a couple of them brought lightsabers. It was just an event. There was people outside dueling, people dressed up, which is was a big deal back then because that didn't happen like it does today. I feel like today there's a lot more fanfare when it comes to the diehards of these franchises, dressing up and going to the theaters. That was kind of unheard of back then. And the fact that that was happening was just mesmerizing for a 13-year-old Nolan. We got our seats, and I was locked in for the entire 2 hours and 20 something minute runtime. I was floored. I liked episode one and episode two when they came out as a kid, but this one really solidified my love for Darth Vader. I've talked in the past how he's my favorite villain of all time in cinema history. This is all about him, and George did that very intentionally. I know he rewrote the script a few times to kind of focus more on Anakin. It was supposed to focus more on me, I guess, on the Clone Wars and stuff. We can talk about that, but the fact that it's just Anakin focused, unlike the other two movies where Anakin was just a character in this machine, is just amazing for me as a 13-year-old. So fast forward 20 years, you talked about how this movie has grown and has received more positive acclaim, and I would dare say, as polarizing as the prequels were when they first came out, this movie in particular, because you still get it with episode one and two, but this one has really brought together the fandom. I don't really see that many people anymore. There's always going to be the outliers, of course, especially in Star Wars, that really hate this movie. I think there's something for everyone in this film, and that's really cool to see
Mhm.
because we go back, we can talk, we can do a whole episode on the hate that these prequels got and Hayden Christensen and all of that. So to see Hayden Christensen go to these cons now and go to these Star Wars events is awesome to see. I think this movie, the reason it grew so well in the fandom and the reason it's appreciated is also the reason that I feel it was criticized, and that's the pacing. I think when the movie first came out, the pacing was like a friggin' tornado. I mean,
Mhm.
so many things are happening all at once, and I think that was why people were so critical, where they wanted, a slower descent with Anakin and Vader. But now that we've had 20 years to digest it, it's amazing. It's awesome. I mean, every scene is so iconic. And now that we can kind of, you know, I we have the shows, the Clone Wars and stuff to kind of fall back on, but it's even better now than it was 20 years ago. I watch it obviously differently as an adult, but every time I watch this film, it's a treat. We did our franchise rankings last year, and I believe this was in my top three. I know I was going back and forth between this and Return, but I believe this cracked my top three. So that just goes to show you how high I regard this movie. It's not perfect. It does have its flaws, and we can definitely get into that. But this is just what a wonderful film, and it's awesome to hear those box office numbers
Hmm.
for a re-release from a movie 20 years ago. That is just warms my heart as a lifelong Star Wars fan.
Yeah, that's the thing. People have such a wonderful reception and just love for this film. I mean, this was really the first Star Wars to sort of become part of, if you will, meme culture. I mean, this film has been quoted, it has been injected into the pop culture zeitgeist really ever since probably the onset of the 2010s. I mean, this film just, again, from Obi-Wan Kenobi's, hello there line, which of course, this wasn't the first time it was said, but just in the context of this film to some of the great stuff with Palpatine. I mean, the unlimited power. I mean, that just it writes itself. It's a film. You make a good point. It's a film for everybody. So I mean, there's the stuff for the diehard fans. There's the stuff I think for the casual observers. Like it's a in many ways it's a popcorn film, but there's a lot to it. It's not just mere, you know, cheap entertainment or something like that. There's actually a story and something significant that it has to say. Um, since you mentioned just the sort of rankings, as I was, doing as I often, have done in the past with, re-ranking these films, I can say this film moved up into the number two spot for me. It was in number three last year, but after seeing it the other night, I was like, no, damn it, gotta move it to number two because there's just something about this film where it's such an experience and a ride that you almost can't wait to go and watch it again to pick up on the different either nuances or details. I mean, again, I've seen this film countless times, and I found myself picking up on little details and nuances that you may not have noticed before, or callbacks or call forwards, if you will, to some of the other films, which I thought was a nice little detail. I mean, again, George Lucas's line, "Everything rhymes." I mean, that's certainly true with this film, but Let's uh let's begin with sort of a breakdown of this movie, sort of going through act by act. And again, there's so much that we could you know digest and analyze here. And so again, feel free to chime in when need be, Nolan. But I have to say, just as a fan of these movies, I think this has the best opening of any of the Star Wars films. Just from the first shot of that Star Destroyer over Coruscant, the way the John Williams score hits, you see the two fighters of Anakin and Obi-Wan coming in to the frame, and then of course it opens up into this glorious and spectacular battle over the planet Coruscant as they're making their way to Grievous's ship to try and rescue the Chancellor. I mean, I felt like a kid again, just sort of being sucked up in the pure just action adventure of that opening. I mean, it really grabs you from that first moment, and that's kind of in difference to the previous two movies where it was much more methodical and not necessarily slow paced, but there was more kind of setting up the scene and setting up kind of the larger details. Right here, we are thrown into the action, and it goes 100 miles an hour, and it really doesn't ever let up from this moment on all the way even to the end.
For sure. I love how you said that this movie doesn't let up. The reason I think it's so memeable with these lines is because of the pacing that I talked about. I mean, there's no slow parts of this movie, and you said that you can rewatch this and pick up on things. I think this is the most rewatchable Star Wars film in the entire saga. It's not my favorite, but I think it's the most rewatchable because it has so much in it. There's so much substance, there's so much subtext that you can pick up on. And now that we have these other mediums like the Clone Wars TV show and these other TV shows, it just adds layers to this film. It just That's why it's aged beautifully. But no, going back to this opening sequence, I agree with you. It is spectacular. It's the best opening that Star Wars has done. It's a good. I timed it. By the time they get back to Coruscant, it's over 20 minutes. This opening sequence. I mean, that is a good chunk. I know this movie is a longer film. It's over 2 hours long, but 20 minutes for one opening sequence where, like you said, there is no let up whatsoever. It's pedal to the metal the entire time. You have the space battle, you have the operation to save Palpatine, you have the fight with Count Dooku, you have the after they rescue Palpatine, they're them escaping the ship. I mean, it's got everything. It's like its own little mini movie space adventure in one. And then all of a sudden, you're on Coruscant, and okay, now the movie starts, and now it's like now we're getting into the movie. It's like, oh, that was just a fun little adventure, but now we're getting into the nitty gritty, and it's just amazing. It's like you said, it hooks you from the beginning, and it's got humor, it's got some levity, which the rest of the film doesn't really have. So I like how that was added to the beginning of this film to kind of bridge the gap, I think, between Attack of the Clones, which was much more lighthearted and much more of like a space adventure movie, to the darker tones of episode 3. So I thought that was a brilliant move by Lucas. And yeah, I want to get into like the breakdown of this whole sequence because you didn't even touch on Count Dooku and his death. I know that's very polarizing how early he dies in this film, but it's so impactful and it sets the stage for the rest of the film, and I think it's done really well.
Well, it's funny because Count Dooku, of course, is killed off. Spoiler alert, everybody! Right in the first part of this movie, and I think it is a testament to not only the way the character was created, because he only appears, towards the very end of episode 2, and we're not talking like a full-fledged character that's carrying over 3 movies. This isn't Darth Vader, but yet he has such a presence in both the end of episode 2 and for this first part of episode 3, on top of the fact it's played by the late great Christopher Lee. I think the character in a lot of ways seems even bigger than he may have even been on the individual page. And certainly when you look at it in terms of screen time, he's not in it that much, but he does make an impact. I love that. Number one, we begin with a lightsaber fight at the start of a film. I think that was a great way of sort of throwing out the proverbial Star Wars rule book and saying, all right, this is a different film. We're going, pedal to the metal from here on out. And I like that this fight here happens at this point in the movie because even though this is sort of an adventure, it's trying to get the Chancellor saved. This whole fight, apart from it kind of being a mirror to what happens in Return of the Jedi with Vader and Luke in front of the Emperor again, this whole fight contextualizes the entire movie. This whole situation, it's Anakin dealing with those struggles of anger and do I give in to my temptations? Do I stay on the path of a Jedi? And of course, he does what Luke sort of does in Return of the Jedi, but he goes all the way there. He finishes off Count Dooku. And I love how there's still moments of Anakin's humanity. Like he's wrestling with, okay, I probably shouldn't have done that. And yet, Palpatine's there. No, 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 you did the right thing. Of course, there's the "do it" line, which is, an instant meme in its own right. But even then, like the his decision to go and rescue or save Obi-Wan, even though Palpatine's like, no, leave him. Those little moments again, like I always sort of laugh at people like, oh, Anakin is such an underdeveloped character. Like, no, like those moments right there, those are great character pieces because you're seeing the struggle of this guy. Like he's he's obviously indebted to Palpatine, but at the same time, he has this connection with Obi-Wan, and he's not going to be, well, I'm just going to leave him to die. Like, no, we're all getting off of this. You know, our fate, his fate will be the same as ours. And I like that because again, you're sort of seeing that struggle where, you know, clearly from Palpatine's perspective, he's just trying to eliminate any and all connection that Anakin has right then and there. And of course, you know, everything, you know, that Palpatine wants doesn't always go according to plan at the first try. And I like that there's sort of that back and forth. Like he's dancing in the dark, but he's not quite there yet. You know, you can see those moments. And again, I love the way Dooku is sort of tormenting him in a way, kind of again like how Vader and the Emperor were tormenting Luke. Only, you know, Anakin is really giving in to those darker impulses and kind of going to that place, even though he knows, I probably shouldn't be.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, anyone who says that Anakin's character is underdeveloped, I mean, this scene alone has, again, it's all about subtext and kind
Mhm.
of just reading between the lines. This is obviously a microcosm of what's to come. Like you said, it's foreshadowing his rise to or fall to Vader, and it's great. I have a question for you
Yeah.
though. Everything you said about the fight, I love the fight. I think it's amazing. I mentioned before how George did a lot of rewrites, and I don't know
Hmm.
if you know the original script had a much different beginning to this movie.
Yeah.
He wasn't supposed to kill Dooku. It was supposed to be more of a highlight of the Clone Wars
Hmm.
and highlighting all of those battles. We've talked before. My biggest issue with the prequels is that we don't get that. We
Right.
don't get we get the time jump.
Hmm.
I believe it's 3 years, and now the Clone Wars is coming to an end in Episode 3. So we never get those battles, and
Hmm.
I think this battle was really well done. And I think if we got more of what this space battle before the fight with Dooku, I think it would have paid off. But do you think that was the right decision? Do you think George, just in general, focusing on Anakin so much and making it all about Anakin, do you think that was right? I mean, obviously, 20 years later, we both love this movie, so you're
Right.
gonna, praise it. But at the time, do you think maybe he should have kept some of that in and, you know, had some more context to what was going on in terms of the Clone Wars and everything?
You know, it's interesting because it's amazing how a simple line in the very first Star Wars film created this entire, yeah, almost separate universe within the Star Wars universe. I mean, the Clone Wars is kind of its own franchise at this point. I think I probably would have liked to have seen just a little bit more. It certainly would have added to the length of this film, which, I mean, I wouldn't have had an issue with. I can understand why, for pacing and purposes, all right, we want to focus just on what's happening with Anakin. I get that. But I think just in terms of the larger context of the world and sort of the world building, the fact that episode 2 begins or ends with the Clone Wars starting and episode 3 is basically the tail end of it, I think it would have been fascinating to have seen at least a little bit more development. I mean, again, it wouldn't have had to have been, you know, an hour's worth of screen time, but I think it would have been something to have seen, like maybe even have started. Yeah, I think even Anakin says earlier in the film, you know, they were on another planet when they got called back to go and rescue the Chancellor. Like that might have been an interesting way to go at it with sort of showcasing all these different battles and then zeroing in on Anakin and Obi-Wan and then them getting the word that, oh, Palpatine's been kidnapped. All right, we got to go save the day. I think just for context and sort of again giving more relevance because I mean again this was before the Clone Wars TV show. I mean, there was the micro series that was on, I think, Cartoon Network for a time. But like, just in terms of the movie setting, I mean, I know as just like a fan, I would have loved to have seen Hayden and Ewan in their prime. In like a either maybe not even a Clone Wars movie, but some more kind of world building vis-a-vis the Clone Wars. I think that would have been would have only added to it instead of detracted.
Yeah, and I think the biggest example of that, of what we something like that we could have seen was, and not to jump ahead too much, was when Order 66 is handed down. We
Mm,
get we see we go to these different planets and we see
right.
these Jedi working alongside these clones. It would have been cool to kind of see that. You get like, it's like a 5 second clip and you're like, whoa, what was that? That looks like
Right.
a cool battle. That was a cool engagement. Why couldn't we get that? So that's what kind of, it just leaves a little bit to be desired. I love how it's focused on Anakin. I
Yeah.
kind of conceptualize the prequels and especially this movie as kind of just um, uh, kind of a telling of Anakin Skywalker. It's not really like you're reading a history book. It's more of you're just like reading a narrative from
Mhm.
this point of view. So that's how I kind of rationalize why we don't get the larger war and everything. But it
Right.
would have been cool to kind of see more context for sure. And I know we've talked about that's not to get too negative, but that's the biggest reason why I'm not a huge fan of Phantom Menace. I love Phantom Menace and I have fun with it, but I don't. I think George pigeonholed himself, obviously only giving himself 3 movies to
Right.
expand this out, and having an entire movie for the Phantom Menace, I think, in my opinion, was a little bit too much. And I think he could have used more of that screen time to expand on the Clone Wars. But that's another discussion. We're focused on 3 right now. But no, that's interesting. I'm glad to hear your insight into that and what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, and I'll just add, since we sort of are on that topic of additional points, and we can probably certainly get more into it later. There was a whole additional subplot to this film that involved Padme and Bail Organa and sort
Yes.
of the formation of what would become the Rebel Alliance. Again, I understand, like we've said, focusing on Anakin's story is again what this movie is all about. But as someone who again just loves the lore and the mythos, the scenes involving Padme and Bail Organa, I would have loved to have seen those, even if it wasn't all of them,
Yeah.
maybe one or two, just to again just sort of showcase where things are going down the road. That would probably be my only other criticism, and again, I say that lightly, of this film, is that
Hmm.
I wish Padme had a little bit more to do, particularly how she was much more active in the other films. And again, we've already said it. It's a streamlined focus on Anakin, but I just would have loved to have seen those scenes incorporated into the larger narrative, because again, I think it sort of really hit home sort of the subtext of what was going on in the Republic, sort of the rise of the Empire, and what this group of people were planning to do to sort of confront Palpatine. And I like that kind of behind the scenes minutia, because then you can kind of see, oh well, this is where ultimately the Rebel Alliance, would be picked up down the road. But I mean, again, those are those are small little nitpicks. But
No, I definitely agree. I mean, I think that's probably the biggest critique I have in terms of things that were cut. It's such a shame that a character like Padme is kind of relegated to her chambers the entire movie. I know she's pregnant, but she's not that pregnant, and she
right,
definitely could have had a more active role in this movie. Except for the very end of the movie, obviously she has an active role. But yeah, I'm a mechanical guy. I like seeing like how mechanics work with politics and everything. So I would have liked to see that personally as well. It would have been really cool. I think that was a travesty that he cut that, and I don't even think he did. He even shoot those scenes. I don't even know if it
no,
got to
they've all
production.
been. That's the thing. These were not even like uh, you know partially completed scenes. These were all done, scored,
They were okay.
lines looped, everything. So I mean,
Yeah,
like, I again, if
yeah,
there was ever a 4 hour cut of this movie, I
yeah,
would, I would gladly
yeah.
take it.
And that would have been a great way to bridge the gap to Episode 4, A New Hope. I mean, we don't really have that at all. We have obviously Vader, but that's the only connection. I
Yeah,
know also that there was an original idea to have a young Han Solo.
right.
I believe he was going to be on Kashyyyk. He was going to be
Yeah,
like a young kid. I think maybe that would have been a little bit
to
too much.
to
Yeah,
from what I understand about that scene, and again, I don't think it was ever shot or anything,
I
but
don't even think he was ever cast. Yeah,
yeah, but as I understand the way it was at least conceptualized, he would have met Yoda, which would have again sort of made issue with how Han was very dismissive of the
Yeah.
Force, and like again, I think I don't have an issue. Like I know sometimes people will complain, "Oh, why does R2 or 3PO have to pop up in these movies?" I don't have an issue with that kind of, and I wouldn't even call it fan service. I think Han Solo popping up in this movie would have probably been a little too much. We get that shot of the Millennium Falcon showing up on Coruscant. That's enough.
Yeah.
That's
I
enough.
mean, and even R2 and 3PO, especially in this movie, they are not
Oh
really
no,
they're not in the movie that
yeah,
much. I mean,
their
R2
background.
obviously helps in the beginning, the opening sequence. That's probably his time to shine, but then he's largely relegated to
Yeah.
the background. And 3PO, same thing. He kind of makes an appearance at the end and helps get Padme on board. But other than that, they're tastefully done. I think in this
Yeah.
movie, they're not overdone.
No, agreed. And I think Han is, as much as we would like to see, the further adventures of Han Solo. Probably, a 10-year-old Han is probably, if people had an issue with a 9-year-old Anakin Skywalker, I'm
Exactly.
sure they would have had an issue with a 10-year-old Han Solo.
Yeah.
But yeah, another thing about this opening, and I was amazed when I learned this recently. The initial cut of it was over an hour long, and I mean, again, we said it's like 20 minutes or so, which is wild to think for what is essentially one extended scene. It's not like they're going to multiple different places here. It's just merely getting Palpatine back and getting off the ship. Um, you know, like I said, I would always take more Star Wars, and certainly, if there's ever a 4-hour cut, sign me up for it. But I think what we get, outside of my, thoughts about it would have been cool to have more context with the Clone Wars going on. I think this opening, for what it is and what it establishes with this story, is perfect the way that it is. That I mean, yeah, it would have been cool to see more of like what was going on as they're trying to get aboard the ship and get Palpatine to safety. And I think there was even a scene where Grievous kills one of the Jedi on board. Like it was a whole other subplot within a subplot. But for what we have, it's streamlined. We kind of know what the objective is, and it delivers in that sense.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, the objective is for George Lucas to show Anakin's descent to the
Yep.
dark side, and this is the first step. So, and then it definitely accomplishes that. Anything else was just extra fluff for him. He was hyper focused on Anakin this entire movie, and it really shows. And I think it paid off. I think it's good. I don't think it drags at all. Like you said, it's pedal to the metal. You have the playfulness between him and Obi-Wan, and you can tell that they've been through a lot together
Yeah.
with the different lines and stuff. So, Obi-Wan talking about R2 and how he's not a huge fan of R2
The
and
loose
Anakin
wire
defending
jokes.
R2. I mean, it's great. It's brilliant. And I don't think it needed to be any longer. I would love to see an extended cut as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm just crazy like that, but I'm sure we both are. But
Yeah.
for
Guilty as charged.
larger audiences, I think this was edited really well.
No, yeah, no, it delivers what it has to. We haven't touched on it, but since he is introduced in the opening, we get a new villain in this movie, General Grievous, this new cyborg-like character who, again, there's some subtext with what his character represents and kind of in what will become Anakin's fate down the road. Um, what are your thoughts on Grievous? Because I know certainly at the time there was a lot of, I wouldn't say it was mixed, but I mean, I remember if there was any grumblings, I remember people saying, "Oh, we didn't get enough Grievous," or "There's all these cool toys or whatnot," but like he's kind of underutilized. What did you think about his character and inclusion in the story?
Well, I think that's a larger topic for the entire prequel trilogy. You talked about Dooku, how he doesn't have a lot of screen time. These villains that George Lucas introduced, going all the way back to Darth Maul in Episode One, jump off the page and are larger than what the script writes because of their costume design and the way the actors. We talked about Christopher Lee, how he just commands respect when he's on screen. That's a strength of the prequels, that their villains are so memorable, but it's also, a weakness because we don't see them too often. I think Grievous, though, in terms of screen time, I actually have the least amount of problems with Grievous. I would have liked to see more screen time from Dooku
Hmm.
and Darth Maul. I would have liked to see Darth Maul have some more lines and and stuff. But Grievous, I mean, he's got a decent amount for what he is. I mean, I like how they left it ambiguous. I mean, why is he the way he is? And some people might chalk it up to, oh, this is George just wanting to throw in some crazy robot that wields four lightsabers. But no, I think he's fine. I don't think I needed more of Grievous. I think sometimes ambiguous villains are left the way they are on purpose, and I don't think I need to have like this big backstory of Grievous and everything. And I know we've gotten that, with some other stuff
Mhm.
now because everyone wants more. But I think it's fine. What about you? How do you feel about Grievous? Because I think he's fine with his role.
Yeah, I never had an issue with him. I thought he was for what his purpose is in the story. I thought it was handled deftly. I like that we don't know much about him. Again, I think that if I have one, well, I mean, I have a few, but we'll say that all for another day. Uh, I think that's probably my one main issue with sort of what the Clone Wars shows and even novels and graphic novels have done is they've sort of taken some of these characters who were maybe left obscure in the movie and kind of expanded them in a way. I even sort of have the same issue with Darth Maul in some sense. Like sometimes what we don't know is cooler than knowing every single detail. And I like that we don't know anything about Grievous in this movie. We get the little bit of background that he was trained to use a lightsaber by Count Dooku. That's it. He's the leader of the droid army. We don't need to know anything more with that because it's in many ways irrelevant to this story. I mean, if this
Yeah,
was some, multi-part, 10-week saga, fine. Maybe, give us a Grievous backstory. But like for the purpose of this film, he's in it just enough. And again, he's there to serve the story. He's there to sort of, showcase that there's clearly been a revolving door of generals leading the droid army during the Clone Wars. So I kind of like that it's like come down to someone like this. Again, we don't know what he is: half man, half machine, half cyborg. Who knows? And again, it doesn't matter. He's just there to be intimidating. He's there to further the plot, and frankly, he's just cool. Like there's just something about like again, he's got four arms. He's got the
yeah.
lightsabers. Like I mean, that's
I
I
mean, we
remember
do know we do know he's a collector. He collects
he
Jedi
does
lightsabers.
he does
The
collect.
only thing for that intimidation factor, I guess it would have been pretty cool to see him actually kill a Jedi to
Sure.
to kind
Yeah.
of establish his power level before Obi-Wan goes after him. That I guess maybe I would have added. So maybe that scene that you were
Right.
referencing where he kills the Jedi in the beginning could have been useful. But other than that, no, I like his character and he's just cool. And when he finally whips out all four lightsabers, I mean he doesn't do anything with them. He
Oh
just
no,
is
he's
very flashy and then Obi-Wan just,
cuts his
handles them
hands
pretty
off. Yeah.
quickly. So, but it's still cool. It makes for great action figures, and
Oh
which
yeah.
Lucas gets all the profits for. So maybe that's what he had in mind by introducing this character. He's like, "Oh, the kids are going to love this."
I mean, can't go wrong with that. Little
Yeah,
capitalism. Nothing didn't hurt anybody. No. Yeah, I think it's it is what it is. All right, so that kind of sets the stage of this film. I mean, there's a lot that is packed in here. We get, of course, sort of the feeling that the Clone Wars is on the way out. We know that the dark side is certainly within Anakin. He is tempted, and it's now just a matter of time for kind of Palpatine to keep pulling the strings and get him to go over to the dark side fully. And that sort of brings us to where a lot of the meat of this story is found, and that's of course once we get back to Coruscant and Anakin starts having these premonitions, these dreams about losing who we now learn is pregnant Padme during childbirth. And this, of course, tying back to what already happened with his mother, where he was having nightmares and visions of her forthcoming death. Anakin is now hypersensitive and worrying that he may lose the woman that he loves and his unborn child, and he is just put in a state of confusion and uncertainty. And there's a great moment that happens after Anakin's first premonition where he goes and talks to Yoda. And I think this is one of the most important scenes that takes place in this
Yeah,
movie
yeah.
because Anakin sits down and he is explaining what's happening to Yoda. He's not going into detail, obviously, but he's talking about his feelings. And I mean, Noah, I think we're both on the same page. I'll turn it over to you. What do you make of this particular scene? Because I think it is what really sets up the rest of the movie from here on out.
Well, what do I make of it? Is Yoda is the true villain of this movie and the prequel. I mean, I call him pull string Toyota with his lines in this scene. I mean, it's like he's a robot and he only knows a few set of lines. I mean, you have this guy, like you said, he's not going into too much detail, but he's coming to you as a Jedi Master, as the leader of the Council, the leader of all Jedi, and he's, trying to get answers, and you're just not listening. And this
Yeah.
is just obviously a microcosm of the state of the Jedi
Hmm.
in this movie, and they are just so set in their ways and not willing to budge, and they're so blinded by the status quo that it's a failure. It's a complete failure on Yoda's part. He basically just tells him, because Anakin does reveal that it's he's having these nightmares about someone he cares about. So he does reveal to Yoda that he has feelings towards this person. Now Yoda doesn't, he doesn't reveal that it's Padme and that he got her pregnant or anything, but as strong as Yoda is, he probably has a sense of what kind of feelings that are going through his mind because Yoda can pick up on that stuff. So the fact that he completely dismisses Anakin and just says, you know, you have to let go of attachment. Like I said, it's like a pull string. That's the only thing he knows, and it's so heartbreaking and it's so sad because people talk about how Anakin, and this is a larger conversation, how he falls so easily to the dark side in this movie. But I push back on
Mm-mm.
that because
No.
there are moments in this film, there are a few moments, and I'm sure we'll get into all of them, where he's doing the right thing and he goes to the Jedi for help and
Yeah.
they just completely blow him off. And it's really sad and it's really heartbreaking to see when you rewatch this movie so many times like I have. And it's just, yeah, it's just a failure. It's just a total failure. And it just shows, again, this movie is so brilliant because it doesn't need a 15-minute exposition to show you what the state of the Jedi are. And this scene alone tells you everything you need to know about what's going on in this film and what's to come.
Hmm. And again, I sort of love how there's the callback or call forward, if you will, to sort of a similar conversation that happens again in Return of the Jedi with Luke and Yoda, and then ultimately with Obi-Wan, where again Luke is sort of explaining his dilemma about, okay, what do I do? He's my father, but I'm not going to kill him. And their whole thought is, well, you're going to have to kill him. There's nothing you can do.
Hmm.
And again, it just sort of shows that they never learn from the past. They never learn from their mistakes. And again, it all begins, I mean, certainly was in motion before it, but it is all crystallized right here in this context where, I mean, they just, he's looking for answers and they're giving him, talking points or flashcards. And of course, it sets him up to where he ultimately, tragically ends up. And again, it is a tragedy. This is not meant to be like, again, everybody is of course responsible for their own actions, but this is really in the same like Shakespearean Greek opera paradigm where you are watching this character be just sort of thrown to the wolves, despite asking for help, and
Yeah.
nobody there to rescue him. You sort of alluded to it, and we'll get into a lot of the other more sort of expansive and pertinent moments where Anakin's sort of conscience runs up against to what the Jedi are doing. But first off, there is that exchange where Palpatine puts him or makes the recommendation for him to be his a personal representative. Again, Palpatine always there to sort of be, the voice in Anakin's ear to kind of tell him what he wants to hear and be that encouragement. And that, of course, sets in motion Anakin being put on the council, but Anakin not being granted the rank of master, which again makes him feel inferior and feel like the Jedi are are just sort of using him, and that, of course, is crystallized later on when, after they are out of a session of the council, Obi-Wan drops some real heavy truth on him that they have put him on the council. They're going to have him be Palpatine's representative, but they want him to do something for them. They want him to, in essence, spy on the Chancellor and find out what it is he is up to. Again, they don't know that he's Darth Sidious yet, but they have a lot of suspicion that something is not quite kosher with Palpatine, and they want to get to the bottom of it. And of course, it's in this moment where, again, we are seeing that the Jedi are not this high and mighty and prestigious organization who have this great, moral center and stand for peace and justice in the universe. They have become in many ways just as corrupt as the very system of government that is failing. I mean, they're basically saying, "Yep, we don't care about anything else. Just go and do this. We're going to put you into the lion's den. You tell us what we want to find out." And Anakin is sort of like, "Well, why am I doing this? I don't feel right." Kind of being utilized as a tool, if you will, for the Jedi. And again, it sort of creates that feeling of distrust and separation that was already there, but the rift continues to grow. And you see it again right in this moment where, Obi-Wan is trying to sort of even take the noose off his own neck by saying, "Well, really, the council wants you to do it. It's not just me." And it's like, Obi-Wan, you're delivering the message. Yeah, you're the messenger, but like, again, you're tagging him with this assignment. And again, you sort of see the frustration, the confusion, and the conflict arise in Anakin, where he's like, okay, first off, they're not helping me with my premonitions. Now they basically want me to go and spy and commit an act of treason. I mean, it just goes to show how the Jedi had been completely morally bankrupt at this point, but also how, in a lot of ways, Anakin, I'm not saying he's justified at where he goes, but there is that, like, okay, well, they're clearly not in the right anymore. Maybe I should see what's going on the dark side, for lack of a better word.
It's a decent plan on paper, but it's just executed so
Yeah,
poorly. If they would have came to Anakin as a council, like
right.
together, and said, "Listen, Anakin, we're gonna let you be on the council because we trust you. I know you're going through some stuff, but just be careful." You don't even
Yep.
have to say spy or anything. Like, just they could have handled it, but they're so self righteous that they don't
Yep.
see any pushback whatsoever. They take Anakin for granted, like he's the chosen one,
Right.
and
Right.
he's going to do the right thing because he's a Jedi and he's not master yet. But we just it's not even like they trust him. It's just they take him for granted, and they don't
Yeah.
even conceptualize a world or a galaxy where one of their own turns on them to become a Sith. You know what I mean? Like, even
No,
though Dooku was one of, so I mean that just
I
goes
know.
into that. But it's such a smart script because the audience going into these films obviously know what Palpatine is and what the Jedi are, and we're
Yeah.
we're we're supposed to root for the good guys, right?
Right.
But when you see the scenes with Emperor Palpatine or Chancellor Palpatine and Anakin, he is a true friend to Anakin. I mean, he's so tactful, but he
Yep.
is there for Anakin. Whereas the Jedi, like I said, are so cold with him and are so just dismissive. It fucks with you as an audience member. It's like, wait a minute, these are supposed to be the good guys, and they are
Yep.
not there for him at all. Meanwhile, his friend Palpatine is really like a shoulder to lean on. I know he's doing it for his own means, but he's so much smarter than
Yeah.
the Jedi. And I mean, obviously, I mean, to
Yeah.
pull off this plan and not get caught was just masterful on his part. And, it just proves that the Jedi were just not in a good place. But he is legitimately there for Anakin, and he's so smart in the way he approaches Anakin because he is in tune with his feelings and he knows what will work and what won't work. But the Jedi who raised him have no idea. And even Obi-Wan, I mean, Obi-Wan is kind of the scapegoat, so I kind
Yeah.
of feel a little bad for Obi-Wan, but at the same time, it's like, no, you're on the council too, buddy,
Yeah.
and you could have spoke up and you could have said, I don't agree with this and stuff. It's not like you have no voice, this
Right.
isn't, something that you can just roll over and expect good results. So, yeah, I think it was really brilliant the way Lucas played this, and again, it so efficiently highlights the Jedi's shortcomings in these
Hmm.
movies and how much hubris they have that it's really well done. And it's like, I think going back to, I hate to talk about stuff that isn't in the movie, but I know George also originally had a script where Padme dying wasn't the only reason for Anakin's turn. He had a few different reasons, and
Right.
one of those being is that he firmly believed that the Jedi were corrupt and were
Hmm.
trying to take over the Republic. He kind of re-edited the movie to not really implicitly say that,
Hmm.
and it was just all about Padme in the final cut, but that makes total sense why he would feel that way because the Jedi are just so cold and calculated that why wouldn't he think that?
Well, that's the thing. It may not be there front and center in the final product of, but it is certainly there in the subtext. And again, you hit the nail on the head with this script. It's really a masterful job to sort of go into this movie and have the idea of the Jedi, the legacy of the Jedi, be subverted in a way where it's like you said, you're almost saying, "Wow, they're supposed to be the quote good guys, and yet they're just fucking up every which way they turn, and they don't even realize it." Like, I mean, again, again, this is all preordained, and this is the way the story was meant to unfold, but it is sort of just like gobsmacking, like they are just so arrogant in their own way. I mean, even Palpatine says that to Yoda when they have their fight later on, like your arrogance blinds you. And yeah, clearly they did not see any of this coming. And I love that as a story technique where you're able to take the good guys and truly deconstruct them. I mean, I think this is how you deconstruct heroes in a way where you put them in this position where you think nobody can touch them, and then you have just sort of everything unfold all around them, and then they're left, sort of holding the bags at the end, saying, "Okay, what did I miss?" I think that's very humanizing in a way because it's sort of like these are not godlike characters, even though they can do all these incredible things. They are just as susceptible to vanity and to blind hubris that again they don't know it's over until it is ultimately over. And that's again I think another wonderful part of this script. They've lost before they've even realized it.
Yeah, and while we're on this topic, I just wanted to bring up, I think it's so brilliant that Palpatine uses Anakin's lust for power and turns it against him by planting the seed that the Jedi as a whole want to overtake the Republic.
Yep.
And so Anakin sees himself in the Jedi. And he probably, even, subconsciously, because he wants power, he probably now is manifesting that over this film to believe what Palpatine is saying. It's like, well, if I feel that way, then the Yoda and Obi-Wan, they probably feel that way too. So again, it's brilliant. The more times you watch this movie, I mean, it took me a while for to pick up on these things.
Mhm.
So, that's why this movie ages so beautifully. It's like every time you watch it, you pick up on something else. And I don't know if half of this stuff was intentional or not, but I still pick up on stuff to this day. And it's such a fun time.
Oh no! Again, I mean, I leaving it the other night. I was talking with somebody who was like, I'm really pissed at Yoda in that scene. Like, come on, man! Like, you're
Yeah.
supposed to be the sage of wisdom, and you're just handing out cue
Uh,
cards. It's just like I'm like, God damn it! You're handing him
yeah.
over to the wolf. But I mean, again, it's all part of the beautiful nature of this story. But it's just like, oh, like that's again the stuff that you pick up on each new watch.
Yeah, and I love how you said how you take these heroes and it's really smart to kind of show they're not humans but the humanity of our heroes and how they're flawed and they can have bad traits. I think this movie does it brilliantly. I think this is what The Last Jedi maybe could have used a little bit of this. I think The Last Jedi misses the mark with Luke, and I appreciate the themes they were going for,
Yeah.
but I think they just missed the mark. Whereas this movie, I think, really hits it because despite all this, we still know that like Yoda is trying to do good. Like they're
Right.
not, you know what I mean? Like whereas I think The Last Jedi went a little too far with that. I think this movie, I think, rides the line to where we're still rooting. By the end of it, we still, it's not like we want Anakin to turn. I mean, I've
No.
seen this movie hundreds of times and I'm still yelling at the screen for him to not
Yep.
kill Windu. So,
Yep.
that's what's so brilliant about it, is that the fact that we see these flaws, we're still know that they're trying to be on the right side of history, and it's
Yeah.
just all in vain.
Well, no, that's the thing. When you can still make your characters likable while making them human, then you've done your job. You don't have to show somebody, milking the space cow or something, to make the point. No, we won't go down that path tonight. That's for another episode. We'll do that for the 10th anniversary of
Yeah.
The Last Jedi. There is, of course, the scene which, I mean, now I feel like it's almost become just memeified because of the performance and the dialogue of it. But the scene at the opera, which again I think is another pivotal moment in this story, where it just further cements Anakin in his descent to the dark side, his lust for power, his desire to control things. Everything is all coming into fruition right here. And it is, of course, where Palpatine again brilliantly lays the foundation with, this time, instead of talking about delusions of grandeur and power and whatnot, he really drives the point home with this tale, which again, it's become a meme at this point. Have you heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? But putting all that, of course, to the side, this is such a moment where, I mean, one, the acting by Ian McDiarmid, and we can certainly get into him at some point. This is such a chilling scene because it is just two people seated, and it's largely just Palpatine talking and Anakin listening and reacting to it. And I particularly noticed on this watch the body language of Anakin as Palpatine really starts to draw him in. Where first Anakin is like, no, the Sith are bad, and they give in to their passions, and the Jedi are not like that. And of course, Palpatine, always with a trick up his sleeve, recalculates and then drops the bomb about Plagueis and the ability to control life and beat death. And you'd see Anakin just spark. He comes to life. Oh my God, there may be a way to save Padme. And again, there's that wonderful moment where he's like, is it possible to learn this power? And Palpatine's like, oh, not from a Jedi. And I know some people are like, story wise, oh, why is he okay with this? Basically, like, wouldn't you be questioning that? Like, he's all but basically saying, I am the Sith Lord here. But yet, I love, because when you look at it through the perspective of Anakin, he is not thinking about what is the Jedi, what's about the Sith. That's irrelevant. He has now found a possible outlet to save Padme, and that is all that is on his mind. He doesn't care about what the Jedi have put him up to. He doesn't care about the war, the what's going on with Grievous. He is focused on, I might be able to save Padme, and this may be the way in which to do it.
Say what you want about George Lucas and his dialogue, but I don't care. This scene is a masterpiece. Ian McDiarmid should have won every award
Thank
for
you.
this scene alone.
Thank you.
His facial expressions, his shifts in tone. um, he is the Emperor Palpatine. His performance in this scene is what I think of when people talk about Palpatine manipulating people, and that's kind of his superpower. It's because of this performance, and it's just so well
I
done.
know.
You talk about Anakin, you're focused on Anakin, but you could focus on either one of them, and
Mhm.
then of course you get, like you said, at the very end, you get Anakin, who's so inquisitive, and you can tell he's perked up, and he has an open mind, which is
Yeah.
amazing for a Jedi to kind of open his mind. And that's another example of why he is the chosen one, because this
Right.
is a callback to maybe even Return of the Jedi with Luke and how he keeps an open mind. But when he gets when Palpatine finally gets the line out of Anakin, it's like, how can one learn this power? It's like, as soon as he says that, Palpatine's like, I got him, hook, line, and sinker. Like, and then his line delivery, I mean, not from a Jedi, is just, I know it's meme to death, but it's so well done.
I know.
And I think it's meme to death because it's just so impactful.
Yeah,
And the line delivery is just there that it's just, oh, it's so good. So good. It's, it's one of the most brilliant scenes in all of Star Wars. I mean,
I would agree with that.
I'm, I've watched this movie over 20 years and I'm still like hanging on every word that he's saying, just like Anakin. You're in Anakin's shoes, just
Yeah.
transfixed on this story that he's telling. It's just amazing.
Again, say what you will, you said it perfectly. George Lucas gets a lot of criticism for his scripts. I personally I don't have an issue with it because I think there was a method to the madness with what he was doing. But like this scene in and of itself, like people say, oh, George Lucas can't write dialogue. Go and watch this scene. And yes, of course, there's the performance that enhances it. But I mean, just this whole tale, this whole shift in tone, like again, it's another turning point on which the story progresses, and it just
It's
again,
also sorry to cut you
no,
off. Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, I just wanted to bring up before we moved on. It's also a great kind of example of how Anakin sees Palpatine as this father figure.
Yeah.
After Qui Gon dies, that's obviously a missing hole in his life. He doesn't have that parental figure, especially that father figure in his life. And when Palpatine challenges him and says, the Sith only look inward, and Palpatine challenges on that and says, and the Jedi don't.
Mhm.
Anakin normally would probably storm out and would get really upset, but he respects Palpatine enough as a father figure to kind of listen to that line and let it sit and digest. And he was kind of taken back, and he's like, "Oh wait, maybe he's got a point." So that's also just a brilliant way to kind of, again, this script is so efficient.
Mhm.
It doesn't flesh out all of this stuff over like pages of script, but it has these little moments where if you really pick up on it, it's got so much subtext.
No, and this is again another brilliant exchange with it. Um, Before we get into the big scene that kind of crystallizes this act, the rise, if you will, of the dark side. Um, Any thoughts as it relates to what happens with Obi-Wan when he confronts General Grievous on Upatar and sort of kind of the waning hours of the Clone Wars?
No, I mean Obi-Wan, he just gets shit done, man. I mean,
Yeah.
he is a warrior through and through. He is a spy. He can fight. He can just kill things and get away and always survive. I mean, his only weakness is Dooku, right? He's 0 for 2 against Dooku, but other
Yeah.
than Dooku, he just gets shit done. I mean, he may not be the most force sensitive. He may not be the fastest with a lightsaber, but he is solid through and through. Like if you were to have a video game, his stats would just be even across the board because he does everything right. And yeah, no, this scene is cool. I love the cinematography of this scene. I love seeing this world, and
Mhm.
that's what the prequels really gave us. More importantly than anything, is they expanded the galaxy so much
Yes.
compared to the original three movies, and seeing all these different worlds. And I know people talk about the CGI fest of them, but it was done with love, and it still holds up. I don't even think it looks that bad even 20 years later. I think it looks fine, and I think it's really cool seeing these different planets and how different they are from one another.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's obviously been a lot of progression in digital technology in the last 20 years, and certainly a lot of that is because of the pioneering of what George Lucas was able to do, not only with this film, but the previous two films, and of course, all the work at ILM. But I mean, I was just sort of taken aback at how well this stuff looks 20 years later. I mean, again, there's movies that have come out recently, like within the
Yeah.
last year or two, or even 5 years, and the CGI looks terrible. I mean, not to sort of jump on the Marvel hate train, but I mean, there's a number of films that have come out recently that just I mean they just look terrible. There's no other way to
Yeah,
sugarcoat
it's a
it.
travesty, and I don't blame the artists. I mean, this is a larger
Oh yeah,
conversation of deadlines and
yeah,
studios just taking these artists for granted. Because I'm a fan of CGI when it helps tell
exactly.
a
It's a
story.
tool.
I'm a horror guy, so I love practical effects, but I love CGI just as much as a tool, and it's really a shame that it's getting such a bad rap nowadays because these artists are under the gun and just have to rush through everything, and it really shows. It really does show on screen. It's amazing that you, like you said, literally, like there are stuff that comes out today that looks worse
Yeah,
than these Star Wars movies. I go back to Lord of the Rings. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings guy. There's CGI in that looks better than
yeah.
today. It's insane. Yeah.
Oh no, I mean, again, the difference is time and craftsmanship. I mean, again, I know there's a lot of debate and still to this day about whether Yoda should have been kept a puppet or gone digital like he is for these two films, and of course later on when they revised it in Phantom Menace. But I am still blown away by how good Yoda looks 20
Yeah.
years later. Like he does not look like a digital character.
No, it does not take me out of it at
No,
all. Yeah, I don't even question it for a second. It's really well done, and it was essential, right? Because it's a
yeah,
younger Yoda. I mean,
yeah.
they couldn't do it with puppets.
No, no,
Yeah.
no. I was happy they did it for the certainly for the context in these films, but all right. So we've arrived at what is really this is sort of the third turn. This is of course where everything does start to go to hell in a handbasket for not only the Jedi but the galaxy at large. And of course, this is where Anakin makes the the decision. But before that, of course, he is presented with the truth that Palpatine is, in fact, the Sith Lord. And of course, Palpatine doesn't come out right and say it, but obviously he has said enough at this point, and their final little conversation kind of seals the deal for Anakin, and he
Yeah.
realizes, oh shit, I guess this guy is the Sith Lord. And there's a wonderful exchange where, again, I love how Anakin, even though he draws out his lightsaber, and I noticed it on this time, and someone had actually pointed out to me a while back, and I hadn't noticed it till this one. But when Anakin takes out his lightsaber, if you watch Palpatine's hand,
Mm.
he is sort of reaching for something. And again, it's very quick, but if you watch it, he's reaching for what would be his lightsaber. Because again, he doesn't know in that moment, okay, is Anakin going to turn on me and I'm going to have to defend myself, or is this just all theatrics? But I love how Anakin is sort of, again, he takes out his lightsaber, but he doesn't immediately go and strike Palpatine. Like he's still he's being a Jedi. He's doing what would be the Jedi way here. He's trying to get to the bottom of this. He's trying to be rational, but he still feels that pull because this guy might be able to help him. This guy might be able to be the solution to his problems. And even after all, there is this back and forth. I love how Anakin makes the decision, I'm going to turn you over to the Jedi Council. And sort of, again, doing what would be the noble thing, sort of the right thing, if you will, even in a time of war, to sort of get all your facts on the table instead of making a rash split decision. And
Hmm.
again, I like that we're sort of shown that Anakin is not trigger happy yet. He's still sort of adhering to the Jedi code, even though there is this pull that Palpatine has something that he wants, and he probably is going to have to hear this guy out rather than do away with him.
It's so heartbreaking because this is the moment where Anakin fully realizes himself as a Jedi.
Yeah,
Not only does he not make a rash decision, which is what Obi-Wan and the Jedi have been telling him to do his whole life, is to think, stop, take a
yeah,
beat, you know, think about this. He does that. He goes back to his teachings. He doesn't give in, and then on top of it, he doesn't also give in to the dark side, and he
yeah,
does the right thing. So it's almost like, the light is the brightest before the dark, or
yeah,
whatever the saying. I don't know if that's even a saying, but it's like this is when he is the fully realized Jedi,
yeah,
right before he becomes Darth Vader, and it's
yeah.
so heartbreaking. I love this scene too. I love how Palpatine is still spitting facts, and he says, "What's the line?" He's like, in order to be the
A
chosen one,
wise
you
leader,
have to study all sides of the Force, which
yeah.
is completely true.
I know it's not like
That's
he's lying.
it's He's not lying. So he's using the truth. Maybe Anakin doesn't see it that way, and the Jedi definitely don't see it that way.
No,
And that's part of the prophecy that they misread, was the fact that they thought balance was all one-sided, and that's
Right.
not what balance is. And we get that in the sequels. I think that's what the sequels do really well, is they hammer that home. But yeah, I think this scene is great, and Anakin is just, when you're watching this back, you see him do the right thing, and he's doing the right thing all the way up until
I
the end,
know.
and all the way up until the end, the Jedi fail him
I know.
time and
Again,
time again, and Window just handles this so
oh,
poorly.
that was another scene where I wanted to start screaming at the screen because it's like Anakin has proven himself. He has followed through on what they asked. He has brought them basically the information they've been thinking, but now it's been validated. And their reaction is, go sit in the corner. Go
Yeah,
wait for, like, come on, like, especially the fact that he's the chosen one.
yeah.
Why are you didn't like? I mean, not that everything is always about glory, but like this is supposed to be the moment that has been foretold for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
The eradication of the Sith, the balance of the Force, and yet your response is no. Go wait for us. We'll handle him. It's like, what are you people doing?
I mean, Window always had it out for Anakin.
Yeah,
That's pretty apparent, but I just feel so bad again for Anakin. He just wants to figure out the truth, man.
that's
He
it.
just wants to make sense of all this. His best friend is now a Sith, and he doesn't know what's right from wrong, what's up and down, and he's just trying to figure it out. And the fact that Windu just completely says, you will have earned my trust. It's like, come on, man.
Come
And
on.
I love this. This is one of my favorite parts when Windu just seemingly just grabs Jedi from the break room. He's like, all right, let's go.
I know.
Let's go confront this Sith Lord. It's like, wait, what? Like, what is going on here?
Again, it's just the hubris of the Jedi. It's like, no, maybe now's the time you call an emergency meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
You talk to Yoda, you talk to Obi-Wan, you figure out a plan. This guy's the Sith you've been looking for. Now we're just gonna go in there, take him down, and be no problem. Like, come on, guys! Like, you were asking for it.
Yeah. And I mean, the two of them just get dealt with instantly. And
Oh,
then I think is that Kit Fisto? Is
yeah,
that
Kid
Kit
Fisto.
Fisto?
Yeah,
He lasts for
but
maybe 5 seconds,
yeah,
but it's like,
it's
dude,
not.
come
It's not.
on, man.
No, like you set yourself
That
up for that one,
that's
guy.
actually a question I wanted to bring up
Yeah.
before we get too far into this final act. What do you think of just the Jedi and their plan in terms of like splitting up? I run a podcast called Never Split Up, so I'm always thinking of these moments in when I'm watching these movies. They split up. What do you think of Yoda going to Kashyyyk and Obi-Wan going by himself? I mean, they had to have sensed that like everything was culminating to this moment. Like, wouldn't Yoda want to be nearby for something for this other shoe to drop? I don't get that. I don't know why they did that.
I think what it is, I mean, certainly, story wise, everybody has to go to their corners. But,
Yeah,
I really think it goes to just the lack of insight of the Jedi. I mean, again, I think that is the real other compelling story of the prequels. That is just the failure of the Jedi, the failure of imagination. And I love how there's that scene in episode 1 where Anakin is talking to Qui-Gon and he says, nobody can kill a Jedi. And Qui-Gon, you could do a whole podcast on Qui-Gon just in his role as a Jedi, but he says, no, that isn't true. Like, I wish it were true, but of course a Jedi can die. And you do not see that level of thinking with anybody throughout the rest of the films. I mean, again, you even look at episode 2, Obi-Wan is sent off to Camino by himself. Like, I really think the Jedi had locked in at this point. We've eradicated the Sith. They've been gone for 1,000 years. Like, who's going to challenge us? Nobody. We're Jedi. Like, you
yeah,
know, come at me, bitch. Like, you know what I mean?
yeah.
That's really, I think, how they were at that point where they were untouchable. And it's that kind of arrogance that always brings you down.
And I don't even disagree with like the fact that Obi-Wan went to dispatch of Grievous, because who else are you going to send? Like I said, Obi-Wan gets shit done.
Yeah, you
But the
got it.
fact that Yoda is like, oh, vacation, I will. Like I have good relations. It's like, what are you doing, man? Like you're the head of the Jedi. Like send someone else. Like send a Padawan there.
I,
Like come on.
no, it was not pertinent for you to go. I
This
mean,
is just like you said. This is George. In the 11th hour, he's like, "Oh shit, I gotta get
yeah,
these guys like out of the way for a second.
yeah,
Let me just write something in.
yeah,
It just kind of bothers me that it's not more fleshed out and explained, like why they're not around and why Windu just grabs these random guys that are on their coffee break, probably, and he's like, "Come
right.
on, break's over, let's go."
No, it is bizarre. I mean, how I rationalize in headcanon is like they are just like their heads are so far up their ass at this point that they like everything is cotton candy. Like it just nobody can touch us. I mean, I think that's really what it is. It's like you're taking the B squad to go and fight the,
Oh yeah.
the ruler of the Sith. Like come on, like
I mean, he might as well just gone alone. I
exactly.
mean, why
The
put
result was
someone
still the
through?
same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
why put those Jedi through that?
No, I
Yeah.
mean they all
So,
they,
do you think that we talk about how poorly it was handled, especially by Mace Windu? Do you think it would have mattered? Do you think if he brought, let's say, he brings Anakin with him, I, I have comfort in the fact that I don't even think it would have mattered. I think Palpatine would have figured out an angle if he brought Anakin to still get Anakin to save his life and ultimately done the same thing. But I don't know. How do you land on that?
I think the to borrow an old cliche, the horse was out of the barn at this point. There was nothing like if Yoda had gone, if Obi-Wan had gone with Mace, it was all going to end up the same way. That this,
Well, yeah.
yeah,
I think with Mace, I think Mace was not the right Jedi to confront Palpatine because he gives in to his anger, and
he
then that's
did.
part of his character. I think if Yoda and Obi-Wan are there, I think they do arrest him and they don't kill him. At least I'd like to hope that they would do that. I don't know.
I'd like to think that, but
Maybe I'm
given
giving them too
how
much credit.
well, given how everything had gone up until this point, and again, there's a whole train of thought that Palpatine just got lucky throughout the entire prequel saga, and I can understand that to a degree. I mean, a lot of what happened to him just was pure luck. I mean, everything just sort of fell right into place. But I am sort of a believer that things happen as they are supposed to happen, and that can be for better or for worse. And I think this is one of those cases where it didn't matter. This was ultimately going to go to hell in a handbasket because there was already forces, if you will, at play. And I think it was if it wasn't here, it was inevitable. It was not if but when.
Yeah, and I also don't think I know many people think like, oh, Palpatine is this grand designer and has all the answers. I don't think Palpatine has
No,
all the answers. I think that's what makes him so brilliant is he sets himself up in
he's
these
nimble.
positions to always win. So even if, you know, Anakin doesn't turn right then and there and kill Windu, and he does get arrested, that's still a win for him. It's a smaller win, and it pushes back his plan, but eventually he would have gotten what he wanted, I think.
I mean, that's the thing. He lost his first apprentice, in episode one, and he recovered. Like
Yeah.
he was constantly
Yeah.
shifting in place. You know, arguably the only time he didn't have an actual plan was, in Return of the Jedi. But that's for another day.
Yeah.
And then again, of course, there was the Plan B of the sequels. But again, we'll save that for another time. Um, yeah, no, it is sort of fascinating the way this all um, comes to a close. And before that, there is another scene which I think is it's again what it would be worth contention for like one of the best scenes in all of Star Wars, and that is the scene where Anakin is in the Jedi Council chambers. He's hearing Palpatine's voice and sort of, his musings, if they kill me, something, can't save Padme. And then there's just great silent scene where it's just the John Williams score and it's haunting and beautiful. And Anakin's looking out the window. Padme is looking out the window, and again, it's almost sort of this beautiful force connection between the two of them, where Anakin, again, without having to say anything, it's a perfect case of show don't tell. He makes that decision that, yeah, I am going to do this because of her. I am not going to let her die. And it's I just like I well up watching that scene because it is just so
Yeah.
powerful with the way it is shot, with the kind of the changing of the light from day to night, and of course that John Williams score, which I mean, again, you could do a whole podcast just on John Williams. I mean, he's firing on all cylinders in this particular scene.
I'm really glad you brought this up. I actually have this scene in my notes that I wanted to highlight. This is Star Wars to me. This
Mhm.
scene encompasses what makes Star Wars so great. The score, the cinematography, the themes being explored, and not a word is said. You have the tear at the very end shed by Anakin, and that's the signal to the audience like, okay,
Yep.
he's all in on Padme. Yeah, the fact that they're staring at each other
Yeah.
through, several miles away, but you almost get a sense that Padme is sensing Anakin the same way Anakin is reaching out to Padme. Like she has a little force sensitivity as well.
Hmm.
And maybe that's because she's pregnant. And we can get into all that.
Right.
She's pregnant with Luke and Leia, so maybe she's picking up on that. But it's beautiful.
Mhm.
It's such a beautiful scene, and that's some of my favorite scenes in all of Star Wars,
Yeah.
where there's
Me
no
too.
dialogue and it's just John Williams doing his thing, and it's the actors doing their thing. It's so well done. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it just it's again, it's one of those things, especially seeing it on the big screen this past weekend. Like it really, it hits you. I mean, you can't turn away from it. And I love that you said that it really does define all of Star Wars. Like that is Star Wars in a nutshell. Well, this of course does lead to the climactic moment where Anakin does make the decision that he is going to go to the dark side. This is it. This is where he makes the pact with the devil. This is the scene where the galaxy will be reshaped for the better part or worst part of the next 20 plus years. It all happens in this scene, and I love how it is not a flashy scene. Now, it is flashy, but it is not like a huge spectacle in front of an audience, if you will, not in like an arena. This is not something taking place in the Galactic Senate. It's in a private office. It is just three people, and it is literally the future of the galaxy being determined right then and there. Yes, later on, the formation of the empire will be announced. Palpatine will declare himself emperor, but this is it. This is the moment in which all the pieces fall into place. Anakin makes that decision to join Palpatine. He strikes down Mace Windu and becomes Darth Vader. This is it. This is the moment where the entire rest of the saga has been building towards. This is what the entire sort of basis, if you will, that brought forth the original trilogy. It all comes down to this moment, and we can certainly go through it piece by piece. But I mean, I just have to say, like, just from a pure acting standpoint, I obviously love what Ian McDermott is doing in this scene because I mean, he just like it's so over the top, but yet because of his ability as an actor and because of the character that he's playing, it works so well. Like in any other context, it might be a little too much or campy. Here, it just works because, again, we know who this character is, and the mask comes off, if you will, in this particular scene. But I also love what Hayden Christensen is doing here. I mean, again, there's the scene right by the window where Palpatine is shooting lightning at Mace, and he's deflecting it back onto Palpatine, and just the way Lucas shoots the scene, where it's a mirror image of what happens in Return of the Jedi, with Anakin looking at Mace, and then Anakin looking at Palpatine again, similar to what happened when Vader's looking at Luke, looking back at the Emperor, and of course in this particular scene he makes the choice. He makes of course the wrong decision, but I also love how there's still that flicker of goodness still in Anakin. Like even obviously even afterwards, he's sort of trying to reconcile what he's done. Before Mace dies, Anakin is still the voice of reason. He is the conscience coming through saying, no, you can't kill him. That's not the Jedi way. He must be arrested. He must stand trial. Like, there's a system here. And Mace is like, yeah, to hell with all that. I'm killing this guy right now. Like,
Yeah.
it's sort of like a Pulp Fiction moment or something.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's Sith overrules all of that system, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's like, okay, come on, dude.
but yeah, I love how Anakin is sort of, technically in the like the moral right, but like again, it's like at this moment, like again, the horse is out of the barn here, guys. Like we are, it's all or nothing. But again, this is where it all comes to fruition. This is the birth of Darth Vader. I mean, he may not be in the suit, but this is the moment where he becomes this force of evil in the galaxy. And again, I love how it really is sort of this intimate scene where it's not sort of this over the top action spectacle. Again, there's a great lightsaber fight, and obviously get some force lightning in there, but it's really a symbolic scene of like these kind of situations happen in the blink of an eye. Like it's a split decision, and
Yeah.
then a whole new history is written, or a history ends and a whole new one is written.
It's so poetic. I love what you said, how it's intimate. I didn't need a huge fight between Anakin and Windu. It's this build up and this tension, and you
Hmm.
have these three characters at play, all pleading their case individually,
Yeah,
and it's this triangle. Then you're just on the edge of your seat. You're holding your breath. You're holding your breath. You're holding your breath, and then it crashes. He fucking slices Mace Windu, and you're just like, you
yeah,
just let out a sigh. It's not this like extended fight. It's just this one moment that determines, like you said, the fate of the galaxy. And you're just like, oh no, even though you knew it was going to happen, you're
yeah,
still just so disappointed. And then, like you said, even after the fact, Anakin is like, what have I done? I can't come back from this, basically. This is, Anakin realizing, like, I can't go back to the Jedi after I just killed someone on the council. So, this guy's kind of my only shot here. Like, it's not even like he was like, I don't even know if he was fully on board with being like Lord Vader at this moment, but he really didn't have a choice. He kind of, what's the saying? He crossed the Danube, if you will.
yeah,
There was no going back
yeah,
from this. It's not like he can just arrest. I mean, I guess he technically could have, and he could have lied to the council, but they would have seen right through it. And,
yeah.
he's just fully committed now. And you said he was kind of the voice of reason. I think that, when it comes to Sith, the Jedi have a very hard stance. They need to kill Sith. And this is, again, a larger conversation of what is bringing balance to the Force. Is it
Right.
just slaughtering every Sith you encounter, or is it, more subtle than that? Is it more of a gray area like we explore in the sequels? So I think it was really brilliant. And again, it's this buildup, and then it's just this crash. And you have Palpatine is just sitting there. I love how he's just so weak and frail. And then as soon as Window flies out the window, he just stands up like nothing happened.
I
It's
know.
fucking amazing.
All in a day's
So,
work.
like you said, Ian McDermott's performance, it's so campy and ridiculous because he's literally like killing himself. Like he could have stopped the force lightning at
I
any
know.
moment. He's like, "Please help me, Anakin." It's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? But
You're a
Anakin is
powerful Sith.
so
Come on.
he's so blinded that he just sees his friend is
Yeah,
being hurt. He doesn't realize the context of anything because he's so torn. And it's really well done. I like it a lot. It's the culmination of everything. I mean, this is the moment, like you said. And I believe in this same scene is when he announces himself. He proclaims him Lord Vader. Correct?
that's right. And I
Yeah,
was
this
going
all
to ask
happens.
ask you because a lot of fans still 20 plus years later are disappointed or disgruntled. I mean, when is a Star Wars fan not upset, I guess, at this point? But I guess a lot of people have issue with how Vader is given, or how Anakin is given the name Vader. And a
How
lot
so?
of people thought, oh, there would be more reason or more context, like, why is he called Darth Vader? And To me, I think what happens in the film with Palpatine just sort of knighting him as a Sith,
Yeah.
that's enough. Again, not to, you know, pick on another Star Wars film, but like I don't need to know why Han Solo's last name is Solo. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like I don't need to know the full context of like what is Darth Vader? How does he get that name?
No.
Palpatine gives it to him. That's enough. I mean, he is the
Yeah.
emperor. So I'm just curious if you had any thoughts on that, because I mean, it's apparently still a major bone of contention with people 20 years later.
I don't know how, but I guess I've somehow avoided that conversation because I didn't even know that that was a major critique for some of these wackos. But I
Apparently,
just assumed, I mean, we don't really get that for any
no.
Sith, why they were named what they're named. So I just, I see the scene, I'm like, oh, of course that's how they're named. Their master appoints them
Yeah,
Darth whatever, and that's makes complete sense. I don't see an issue with it. Like none of the other Sith have exposition
no,
behind their name, but somehow we need one for Vader. I think that makes it better in a sense.
exactly.
I think
No.
it's cooler. It's like Palpatine. He just adopted a little puppy, and he's just in the moment. He's like, I'm gonna call you Vader. I just think it is what it is. That's just how they operate. Yeah.
People have reasons to complain about everything, and certainly
I mean,
that's
it's the rule of two, man. There's always a new apprentice, so you got to come up with these names
gotta
quick.
have your day
You really
ready.
have, yeah,
He's already lost too. So.
yeah,
And so this, of course, begins what is the act, really the whole third act of this film, which is not only the rise of the birth of Darth Vader, it's the rise of the Empire. And this is where the film really, I mean, it's been dark compared, certainly unlike any of the other previous films. I mean, Empire would be the only one that's kind of, yeah, I would say borderline, the kind of the dark one. I think this is easily the darkest Star Wars film, as well as being the most emotional. And certainly we've touched on a few of those moments earlier with obviously the Padme scene and what's going on kind of like in Anakin's soul. But things really take a turn for the dark side from here on out because we get, of course, the execution of Order 66. And I love how in this moment the clones immediately change allegiance. And again, this again sort of speaks to the hubris of the Jedi. They've just willingly taken on this army as sort of a gift to them, never questioning it, never looking into what was the real purpose for it. Again, I mean, could there have been more subtext or context? Perhaps. But I love how the Jedi are, again, totally blindsided by the willingness and the ability for the clones to, turn on a dime and just go forward with a new master, a new set of instructions, and of course that involves wiping out every last Jedi. And again, this is another one of those scenes where even though you might be so like frustrated with the Jedi and kind of you can see the flaw and the arrogance that they've had all along, this scene or the scenes that follow, it's a gut punch, man. I mean, just
yeah.
to watch all of these different Jedi across the galaxy be be taken out, to say nothing, of course, of what happens at the Jedi Temple when Anakin marches on it with his clone troops behind him. I mean, I'll just say, like from a cinematography standpoint, I love that scene where Anakin is just marching into the temple and
The
he's
overhead
flanked by,
shot, yeah,
yeah. Oh, it's just such a
yeah.
chef's kiss moment. Again, for people say that George Lucas doesn't know how to make a movie, again, I cite many examples with this film, but God, this stuff, it still hits 20 years later. Like I remember even 20 years ago being like, wow, this is some really powerful stuff here. Like, this
Yeah.
is not your average Star Wars movie here. Like there's no Ewoks, kind of a thing. It's some heavy stuff, but I love that it's never over the top. Like we don't have to see like the younglings meet their end. Like it's enough with the implication. And I like that George just shows enough of what happens without it being overkill, if
Yeah.
you
It
will.
was enough. We had the hologram.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was that's right.
Yeah.
And it's it obviously it culminates with also some some pretty badass moments, I have to say, which I always remember even as a kid, and it did the same thing for me in this last weekend showing of it, where Yoda does the flip and just beheads two of the clones like it's no business. I mean that scene always like, yeah, okay, Yoda still has it.
Yeah. No, it's everything you said, and it's really creepy,
Yeah.
right? Seeing this, knowing that the clones, this was their sole purpose the whole
Right.
time.
Yeah.
Their entire existence was to fulfill Order 66, and that at any moment he
They
could have
could turn.
handed this order down. I mean, it had nothing to do with the fact that he was now a Sith Lord or that he had emergency powers. He could have done this at any moment and all hell would have broke loose. So this was like his ace in the hole,
Yeah.
if you will. So even if things didn't go according to plan and he didn't have Darth Vader, he probably still had this in his back pocket at all times. So it's really creepy
Yeah.
how, like you said, they just turn on a dime and something. We get it again. We get it explained in the shows to
Right.
come, in the animated shows, but how they just something in their brain is just rewired instantly, and they don't show any emotion, any hesitation. It's really dark and it's really creepy. And like you said, I love Yoda. This is probably my favorite scene of Yoda because while the others are kind of a little hesitant and they get mowed down, Yoda just does not
Yeah.
take
Does
any
it?
prisoners. He's
Yeah.
just like before they even lift their rifle, just like, nah, fuck you. Like, you're dead. Like, you're just two clones to me. I'm Yoda. You're like, I don't care. Like, even if I made a mistake, I don't care.
Gone you are. Yeah. No.
And that was a powerful scene too, where he drops the cane.
Yeah. Oh, I know when he's
It's
feeling. I know it
he's feeling
really.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, it really does. And again, like I just sort of love those those nods to the other films. Like there's that moment in A New Hope where Obi-Wan has a similar reaction when Alderaan
yeah.
gets blown up. Like again, just the fact that they are so in tune with the Force that they can just feel, oh my God, there has been such a shift.
I also think this sequence of Order 66 was essential to get us back on the side of the Jedi as well.
Bingo.
So up until this point, we were criticizing the Jedi, but once this happens, it's like, okay, they paid for their mistakes. Like,
They did. Yeah.
they definitely paid. So I'm back on board with Yoda, and I know
Yep.
he's trying to do the right thing. And him and Obi-Wan meet with Bail
Yep.
Organa, which again was another cool scene where Bail kind of realizes, let me get the fuck out of here. I don't know what's
Right.
going on. He's like, yes, sir, it's best you leave. It's like, yeah, no,
Yep.
you're right.
Yep.
Yeah,
Gone. Peace.
I want to see Bail Organa in a horror movie because he would not stick around very long.
No, he
Yep,
would
nope,
survive. He'd get the hell out. No.
yeah. But
Seems
yeah,
Michael
no, I
Myers
think this
coming.
was essential to showcase that, okay,
Yeah.
this was them paying for their mistakes, and now we can kind of try to rebuild with our Jedi heroes and have them like kind of fight for freedom again and really be on the right side of things.
That's the thing, and I love how Yoda is all business at this point. Like, obviously, a lot has happened, and again, when you sort of put it in the context, like this has got to be incredibly heartbreaking and dispiriting. Like, I mean, everything has just been destroyed around him. I mean, and again, to say nothing of, I'm sure reconciling your own failings for allowing this to happen. But I love how he doesn't get bogged down with the emotion. Like we have a job to do. Like his first order of business, like we have to destroy the Sith. Like it
Yeah,
doesn't matter what your feelings are. And I always sort of thought, and I'm curious if you think this as well. I think Yoda was already aware of what had happened. Like he didn't need to look at the hologram. Like Obi-Wan needed that validation, but Yoda, again, because he is Yoda, he was sort of in tune with there's been a shift, and yeah, it's probably been because of at this point it's one of ours.
yeah. I would even go so far as to say he probably knew it was Anakin before seeing the hologram. He's so powerful, and
Yeah.
he I think this was the moment where Yoda snapped out of his hubris and his
Yeah.
meditation. I will. This is where he's getting shit done, and this is where he's of clear mind, clearer than any prequel movie.
Yeah.
And I think with this clear head, because he's in a crisis and he's seeing things clearly for the first time. I think he's going back and realizing maybe like they failed Anakin, and I
Yeah.
think it's all coming to the front, to the
Yeah.
forefront. Yeah. So, what do you think about? What do you think about this scene where they split up again? Another split up moment. We've talked about this, I think, last year when I was on the podcast.
Yeah.
Kind of a silly play. First of all, again, sorry, not to keep going
No,
back.
no.
What do you make of the Emperor sending Anakin to Mustafar? I never quite wrapped my head around that. Why he was told to go kill everyone in the Jedi Temple and then immediately go and kill the Separatists at Mustafar. Like he really couldn't have clones do that. Why do you think he sent him so far away to Mustafar right away? To just kind of be not around while he killed Yoda? Like why do you think that was?
I think it was probably twofold. I think number one, if anything, I mean, certainly Anakin, or at this point Vader, was proving his stripes by killing younglings and killing Jedi. If anything, this was to I think for Palpatine it was to solidify. All right, you are my bitch. You are going to do what it is I tell you, and I want you to be the one that personally executes all these people because I want them to know that I am the one doing this. You know, they all think that,
Yeah.
oh, they're working for me. We're all on the same team. Yeah, wrong. I'm in charge, and you're all going to die. I think there was probably that sort of one sick vengeance, but I think it was also Palpatine is a control freak. Like even at this point, like there's like one. I don't even want to call it a human moment with Palpatine because it feels sort of weird describing him in that way. But I kind of picked up on how at this point on, with like the one exception later on when he shows up at Mustafar to collect him, he really has no feeling or regard for Vader other than you are my instrument, you are my tool, and I am going to utilize you as a killing machine. Like there's
Hmm.
no longer the friend Palpatine at this point. Like
Yeah.
I'm in charge, you will do as I say, and you're going to be subservient to me. So go.
I like that explanation. I kind of always conceptualized it as he's still so fresh, and I think
Hmm.
he Palpatine knew that Yoda was still alive. He knew
Yeah.
that Obi-Wan was probably still alive. I think this was kind of him trying to hide Anakin while he deals with them because
Salvation.
kind of give Anakin like some easy kills under his belt. Go kill
Right.
Viceroy Gunway and
Yep.
go kill these other guys that he doesn't have attachment to because I think he's smart. He knows that he's maybe not ready to kill Obi-Wan because he's so conflicted still and
Right.
he's
No, that's
kind
a
of
good point.
consumed by everything. So, but I also like your explanation too, how he's just has no regard for Anakin the person at this point. Once he appoints him Darth Vader, he's just a tool and a killing machine. So, yeah. I also love the line by Yoda because this sets up the future movies in 4, 5, and 6. When him and Obi-Wan are talking, and Obi-Wan is like, don't send me to kill Anakin. Like, I can't do it. I just send me to the Emperor. And Yoda, I believe he says, Anakin has been consumed by Vader.
Yeah.
That's incorrect. And we see that obviously in the
Yeah.
original trilogy, but he's not consumed by Vader, and he never was, at least in my mind. There was still something there.
Hmm.
So I even still to the very end, Yoda is so black and white with this stuff, and it's like he sees Sith, and it's just like, oh my god, like must destroy, like you have
Yep.
to go and you have to kill them, like any semblance of Anakin is completely gone, and I think that's not true. And I mean, even him killing the younglings and coming to Mustafar to pledge his allegiance to Palpatine proves that Anakin is still there because he's still trying to save Padme.
Yep.
So and of course we get it when he's in the suit at the very end. He has these emotions. So yeah, I felt that was a brilliant line to kind of show that like Yoda is still maybe not
He doesn't get it.
he doesn't get it.
He
Yeah.
doesn't get it. No, and that's that's sort of the beauty of the whole storyline. It just carries they do not learn the lessons of the past, and then
And
Luke finally breaks the cycle.
Well, Luke breaks the cycle, and that's why I think Obi-Wan is also the ultimate Jedi because he has that balance and he has that kind of he doesn't see it so black and white. He can see that Anakin is still in there. And that's his biggest downfall,
Mhm.
obviously, because he can't kill Anakin. He can't bring himself to kill him, and he needs his son to do it,
Yeah,
which is pretty
I know.
pretty dark. But
Oh, that's a whole other that's a whole other thing to unpack. I also have another theory just about your idea of why he split up, or why he
okay,
sent Anakin or Vader to Mustafar. And again, it's not like there's any suggestion of this. It's just something
yeah, it's just
I've
for
always
fun.
thought in
Yeah,
my head. I think he was going to kill Padme. I think he was going to get rid of her
okay,
in some way, shape, or form to truly bring Anakin into
okay,
his circle full.
yeah. That I never even thought of that. That's a great point. That could definitely be true. I mean, we're never going to get
No,
the
yeah,
definitive
it's
answer,
no,
but it's
it's
left.
interesting to think
Yeah,
about.
yeah, it is interesting. Yeah, for sure. Because again, like that just goes in line with what Palpatine does. I mean, he sets up these different scenarios.
Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting avenue that he could have taken. Yeah,
And before we get to sort of the big confrontation, there is this another pivotal scene where, of course, at this point, it's all done except the screaming. The Republic has probably been a sham at this point for the last number of years, certainly since Palpatine assumed power. But of course, there is the great scene where he declares himself emperor. And again, I love George Lucas was very aware of his history and sort of what has gone on in world events, and I love how Palpatine is greeted as a savior and as a hero. It sort of shows that democracies are never uh, taken over. I mean, certainly this was taken over, but nobody knew it, and then they're sort of just handed over to somebody who then says, "All right, I'm now here, and the rest is history." And I get for all the people that say, "Oh, George Lucas, didn't know what he was doing." I mean, no, George Lucas clearly had a vision and was aware of human history and world events, and that's crystallized right here in the scene where Palpatine declares himself emperor, and you get that wonderful line from Padme where she says, "This is how liberty dies with thunderous applause," and again, that's just another, it shows that Star Wars can have a relevancy without sort of beating you over the head with it, if that makes any sense.
no, it does. I always find it a little comical though because during his speech he says, the Jedi have left me scarred and deformed, and I almost died. So wouldn't that be a reason to not have an emperor
I
though?
know.
It's like this guy almost died, and now we're going to give him all this power. Like, what
Yeah.
if he just dies, soon thereafter? Now what do we do? Now we're just stuck with no
Who's in
emperor.
charge?
Yeah, so
There's no
that
next
always
of
kind of
kin.
made me laugh a little. It's like, wait, wouldn't this be a reason to not give him emergency powers? Like Grievous is dead. Like let's go back to the democracy.
Yeah,
But
let's.
yeah, it's kind of funny. And I don't really love how again Padme doesn't really have a voice. She's
Yeah,
just there. And I get it. It's the tone of the end of the film where it's just all hope is lost. I mean,
yeah,
she's doing that, but it would have been cool to see maybe a scene of her trying to plead, like in the hallways, like before the
right.
speech, like with other senators, and they're just kind of like brushing her off, like do something, But
Yeah.
and I'm sure she did off camera, but it would have been cool to maybe see like a
Oh,
little
definitely.
scene of her. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, no, that's why. I mean, I will always say I wish those deleted scenes had been left because it just fleshes out her character in a way and just adds more subtext to the overall story. But I mean, again, I get why it was done the way it was constructed, but still would have liked to have seen it because more Padme is always good in my book.
yeah.
Um,
So let's get back to the big never split
yeah,
up moment. I think that Obi-Wan should have went with Yoda and just defeated the Emperor,
it,
get him out of the way, and then they can deal with Anakin.
it,
I
it
don't know.
it goes back to
I know it
like
does.
they
Yeah.
learn they learn the lesson. Like again, Yoda is thinking clearly, but then at the same time, it's like, nope, we're gonna split up. Like
Yeah.
they do not learn the lessons from the past, and I guess that's sort of the big takeaway from this movie. Like if you are going to keep making the mistakes unless you learn from something, and clearly they didn't. But like again, I think it just speaks to the Jedi's arrogance. I mean, certainly, I think it was probably speaking to Yoda's arrogance that he could just walk in there and take down the Emperor like there was no tomorrow. And I think that's partially why Yoda gets caught off guard at the beginning because I think he goes in there thinking, well, this is going to be easy. I'm going to take this guy down and then we'll be halfway home. And it's quite clear that this is not going to be a simple fight for Yoda. All that, I mean, of course, said. I mean, I love the whole Palpatine and Yoda fight. I think it's one of those moments that it's probably one of my favorite lightsaber fights in all of Star Wars. I just love it because you have the two heavyweights going at it, for the first time, and it's it's surprisingly comical. Like the scene where Yoda walks in and just dispenses with the two guards like it's nothing. That still gets a laugh.
Yeah.
Like I mean, that was probably the biggest laugh in the theater the other night. Like people still love Yoda.
Yeah. No, this is Yoda. Like you said, he means business. He's not fucking around, and this is what we've been waiting for Yoda. I mean, we get the huge duel at the end of Attack of the Clones, which was our first taste, but this
Yeah,
is now the culmination. And as much as I make fun of the splitting up, I think
yeah.
it sets up for an amazing sequence where it transitions back and forth
Oh
between
yeah,
Obi-Wan and Yoda trying to deal with their counterparts. I think it's brilliant. Yeah, this fight is cool. So let's stick with this fight
yeah.
first,
That's fine.
so we don't go back and
Yeah,
forth.
no, I think that's a good idea.
I love the balance between again, we get to see Palpatine with his lightsaber
Hmm.
and really dueling Yoda in the his office or whatever, and then they get to the Senate floor, and it's all about the Force, and
Yeah,
it's very similar to Yoda's first fight in Attack of the Clones, but this is a whole another beast now, and Yoda gets his licks in. I think they did a good job of making it like an even fight. Like you
yeah.
weren't quite sure how it was going to end.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I always consider it truly is a stalemate because I mean even though it's sort of it looks like Yoda bails at the end because of the way it is constructed. Because like we don't get any sort of follow up after he falls off of the pod. Like the next thing, it's Bale picking him up and him going into exile. But I kind of like that it really does, for the most part, make it seem like there's no way, like they really are a match for each other. Like it really is this culmination of the light and the dark coming together, and they really can't get the advantage over the other. Like I mean, yeah, Palpatine gets a few points on the board. Yoda certainly does, but at the end of the day, they're so evenly matched in a way that one can't get the advantage over the other, and so I think it kind of works out in a way where it ends in a draw. And I know it was never filmed, but there was sort of an animation conception of what this fight could have been. And it was much more extensive. And I think even it ends with Palpatine being the one who runs away from Yoda, as opposed to sort of the way it's left more ambiguous. And, having seen it and obviously just coming back from having seen the movie the other night, I like what we got here. I mean, certainly I would have taken, this fight being another, 5 or 6 minutes long. Like I think you could have easily dragged it out a little bit more, just because it's just such a fun contrast. Because it's not just a lightsaber battle, but it is a battle of the Force. But I like what we got here. I think it is ultimately the right balance, if you will, and it doesn't overdo it in a way.
Yeah, I agree. The fight itself, I love. I do push back a little on the way Yoda kind of retreats. I
Hmm.
do wish it was handled a little differently. Maybe Yoda
That's
gets
fair.
injured,
Hmm.
and I think it would have been cool if Palpatine maybe played a little dirty and got the edge over Yoda at the very end and injured him
Mm,
somehow. Maybe like his guards came in to help him or something. I don't know, but
right.
it would have been cool to see Palpatine kind of overpower Yoda in a sense, and then at
Right.
the same time Obi-Wan
Mm,
wins his fight. It would have been a
that's a good
cool
point.
contrast. So that's my only critique. The fight itself, I love how even they are.
Yeah.
I just wish that Yoda had a little bit more of a reason to retreat, because I'm sitting there like, dude, get up.
Get
He's
up.
right
Yeah.
there. I mean, what are you doing, man? Like, what's going on, you know?
And I mean, unless
Gives up a
Yoda
little too easily, I
unless Yoda respected the fact he had the high ground. Maybe maybe that's what it was. No, but
I mean, everyone has the high ground on Yoda at
no,
all
I know
times,
that's the
right? I mean,
thing. It's not
that's
that hard.
yeah,
No, I agree with you. There is some. There needed to be one more shot or mini scene that just sort of explain why Yoda goes. Like even if it
yeah,
was like a I don't know, a forced premonition or something. Like there
yeah.
needed to be a
Yeah, because not
reason
only does he retreat, but he immediately
he
says, "I'm
gets out
going
of.
into exile." It's like,
Yeah,
whoa, 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 wait a minute, because like you said, he was all business before, and now all of a
yeah.
sudden, I guess just seeing the true power of a Sith Lord that he really hasn't experienced for a long time, or if ever. So maybe it's that, but would have liked a little bit more
A little more
exposition
context.
context.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I agree with that. That's a fair point. But I mean, I can still remember watching this the first time in the theater and just being like completely out of my mind. Like, oh my God, Yoda versus the Emperor. Like, this can't be real. Is this really happening? But of
Yeah.
course it did, and it was, it was just wild. To think that like something that you sort of always would think about like before the movie, but like, oh, that'll probably never happen. But then of course you see it, and it's like, again, thank you, George. You really just delivered everything for this movie. But of course, the big fight of this film, the whole context in which this movie is built, and of course, what defines the entire rest of the saga, is the fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan. And certainly, this is a multifaceted fight. This is not just a traditional lightsaber fight. It obviously is the reason that Anakin is put in the suit, and that's one whole facet of it. But I mean, this is the end of a friendship. This is two brothers fighting. I mean, this is really, if he wasn't Darth Vader already, this really puts the icing on the cake. I mean, this is it, because you've got everything happening here. You've got the turn with Padme, and I like how that is handled. Where again, Anakin is doing this from his own point of view, and he doesn't understand why Padme is in a way rejecting him, and then it kind of makes it even worse when Obi-Wan enters into the scene, and it just sort of brings into focus everything he has been thinking about, that okay, the Jedi are duplicitous, and I am kind of the only one who's honest here, and yeah, okay, fine, you've all betrayed me, you're all against me, and I like how it just sort of unfolds in a way where, you know because this is Anakin's story, you're watching it through his perspective in a way, and you can imagine, all right, my best friend is now turning against me. My wife is clearly turning against me. I'm all by myself out here. And all right, fine. I guess the dark side is the only place left for me. And again, I like how it sort of it takes us on his psychological mindset. It's not just like, oh, I'm Darth Vader now. That's the end of it. Like there's a reasoning behind all of his decisions, and of course that just sort of builds to this ultimate lightsaber fight.
Yeah, I mean this dialogue before the fight is just, I mean, it's peak. It's
Yeah,
peak for
yeah,
me. It's so good. I love how we get the twofold. We get Padme coming off the ship and pleading with Anakin.
yeah.
She's like, "Anakin, like, you're breaking my heart. What are you doing?" And that doesn't work. And then you get Obi-Wan come out. And I think this was intentional, because Obi-Wan knows that it's going to be really hard to go against his brother in a sense. So he puts up this wall, this emotional wall, and he's very stern and, no, Anakin, you're wrong. Like this, what are you doing, in a very
Right.
stern kind of voice. So I love how we got the two of Padme really pleading emotionally, like, you're the love of my life. Let's just run away. Like, I don't care what you did. You know, you slaughtered the younglings. Like, I've overlooked that stuff in the past in previous movies. Like, I mean,
I,
like that. I'm here. I'm present. I'm
yeah.
like, this is your prize. Like, just take me and let's go. And it doesn't work. And Obi-Wan stepping out onto the ramp was a huge mistake,
Oh yeah.
because we see it sprinkled in the movie. We didn't even really touch on it, that Anakin starts resenting Obi-Wan throughout this movie with Padme.
Yeah.
He has a few lines and there's a few scenes where Padme mentions that Obi-Wan came and talked to
Right.
her, and Anakin's like,
Why?
"What? Like, why?"
Yeah.
You sense jealousy, like maybe he's a little jealous of her
Friendship.
relationship with
Yeah.
Obi-Wan. Yeah, so that just plays into everything, and then when you get Obi-Wan standing on that ramp with his
I know the
pose,
pose.
his
Yeah.
Superman pose, you're sitting there like, oh
Uh,
no, this is
yeah.
not going to be good. And then he force chokes Padme, of course, and tosses her aside. And that's when, once he does that, I
It's
mean,
over.
it's
Yeah.
over. It's completely over. I mean, he not only does he do it, but he doesn't even like snap out and realize what he did. He's just so
Well, that's
focused on destroying everyone that is against him.
in every scene where he is Vader up until this point, there's a moment of conflict. Like when he goes into the council chamber with the younglings, you see the tear. You see he's almost opposed to the striking down of all of the separatist leaders. There's that scene of him on the balcony where he's watching the sun, and again he's got the tear. This is the moment where you no longer see that.
Yeah.
He is Darth Vader. He has committed, all right, there is no going back. And I like how we sort of get that three-step progression where he finally this is it, I'm crossing the line for good now.
Yeah, and it's really jarring because it's almost like he has no regard for his unborn
I
child.
know.
He only cares about Padme in this movie. He doesn't even really talk about the context of his children being
No.
born. I mean, she asks him initially, do the children survive? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, I didn't get that far because I don't care. I only care about you. It's almost like you kind of wish they had abortion clinics in this galaxy
Right.
far away, and maybe this could have all been avoided.
Right.
It's like because
No, I mean
he
she makes the
cared that much.
no, I
He
mean
cared about Padme and not
that's
his
it.
kids. So even when he force chokes a pregnant Padme,
He
he's
doesn't
not
think about it.
thinking about his kids. No, not at all. He just sees that Padme is now against him,
Yeah.
and that's all that it takes. It's like, well, if you're against me, why do I need you?
Yeah. That's right. No, I don't need you. It's again, I always have to put up that defense when people are like, oh, Anakin is such an underdeveloped character, particularly in this movie. It's like you're just not paying attention. Like
Yeah.
it's all right there, but again, people are going to hate. What are you going to do? This fight, I mean, it is. It's the one we were all waiting for. It is. It's riveting. It's emotional. Does it still hold up for you all these years later?
Oh my, does it hold up for me? Are you kidding me? This is one of the greatest cinematic achievements to nail this
Yeah.
the way that they did. Like you said earlier in the episode, 28 years in the making.
Yeah.
We get these Jedi in 4, 5, and 6, and they're kind of, you got old man Ben Kenobi. You
Yeah.
have Vader, who's not at this peak. You have
Yeah.
Luke, who doesn't know what the hell he's doing with the
Right.
lightsaber. So you're longing for this
Fight.
this fight where you have two Jedi. Well, now it's a Jedi and a Sith at the peak, the absolute peak of their power, just going all in. Like you said, we get it with Yoda and the Emperor, but it's more of a kind of a fight of willpower and
Yeah.
force. It doesn't have so much of that, lightsaber action, which I think is cool. It's a cool contrast, but
Right.
this is what it's all about, man.
No,
I mean,
this
this
is
is
what we
why we go
wanted.
to the theater.
Yep.
This is why kids love this, and this is why we love it all these years later. I'm 33 years old, and I still have a huge smile on my face watching this, knowing that Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen did all of their own stunt work
I know.
and all of their own fighting for this. The only thing they manipulated was they would remove some frames during
Yeah.
some of the swings to make the swings look a little bit more impactful, but the speed is all the same as real time.
It's
They didn't speed
incredible.
it up at
No.
all. It's incredible. Nobody handles a lightsaber like Hayden Christensen. He
No.
is just got so much flair and so much style. I love the contrast between his fighting style and Obi-Wan's. Obi-Wan
Yeah.
is very I don't even know. It's very structured and
He's cautious.
cautious, but
There's almost a method to it.
It's very methodized. Whereas
Yeah.
Anakin, it's so cool. I forget the guy's name who choreographed this fight.
Nick Gillard.
Gillard, correct, Gillard. He was so masterful in
Oh.
showcasing Anakin's style and how he uses his emotions.
Yeah.
Because we always heard that, right? Like, oh, the Sith use their emotions and they
Yeah.
fight with their anger, but to see it manifest in a fight like this and to see the speed at which they're going is just, I mean, how do you not love this? This movie starts with peak and ends with
It
peak. I mean,
does.
you
It
can say
really
a lot
does.
about the filler and the stuff in the middle, but it leaves you just aghast. I mean, it's just.
Oh,
I
no.
don't know what to say. We could talk about this for another hour, this fight, and really go break it down. But I know, we've already been going at it for
I
a
know.
while, but I just, there's so many. I mean, the fact that they go throughout the planet and they go inside the control room and then
Yep.
they're doing that and then they go onto the lava and stuff. It's so grand and it's so epic and it's so long. And every time it cuts back to Yoda, it's like, oh my God, what, get back. Let's
I
get
know.
back
I
to
want to
the
see what's
fight.
going. I know exactly. No,
Yeah. And then John Williams on top of it.
Oh,
Just
that
fucking,
score.
yeah.
It's, I mean, again, John Williams. I mean, the man is a living legend.
This
I
whole
mean,
third act, once he turns into Vader, the score is just
it goes.
firing, man.
Oh,
It
it's
just
incredible.
goes,
It
yeah.
is incredible. I mean, this particular one, I think it's Battle of the Heroes was the name they gave for it. I mean, I know Duel of Fates is certainly synonymous with the prequel trilogy, and
Yeah.
I mean, that's another masterpiece in its own right. But this one, it just hits you on such a level because it's what has been building to at this point. And I mean, again, you sort of look at the time. This was it. Like this was supposed to be the last Star Wars movie, and like you're feeling all of those emotions while you're feeling the
Yeah. You
emotions
don't
of
want it
what's
to end.
exactly you
Yeah.
don't want it to end, and that's kind of how the score feels as well. And like it's triumphant, but then it dials it down when it has to end, and it's like you want to start it all over again.
Hmm. Yeah.
Do you have a particular moment from this fight? I mean, again, this fight is just incredible. Almost feels like a slap in the face because it's you almost need like a better adjective. I mean, it's magnificent. It's pick your phrase. Do you have any particular moment or moments that stand out to you of just like, I mean, you've said it perfectly. I mean, this is peak Star Wars right here.
I, I, I mean, not really. I mean, it's
Yeah,
all, the whole moment is just amazing. I love when they're in the control room and they kind of, they use the force and they
yeah,
push
that's a
each other
great.
back. I mean, there's different moments throughout the fight that I love when they're on the lava and they're balancing on the droids and
Yeah,
stuff. That's cool too. And how they're kind of improvising in the moment and they're kind of parkouring their way to safety while fighting each other. I mean,
yeah.
they're not even like giving each other a second. I mean, they're swinging at each other as they're in danger themselves. I mean, it's great. Just the speed of everything, just seeing it manifest. It's what we've been waiting for.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. I love it. Oh my gosh, I want to watch it again right now. Now that we're talking
I know,
about it,
right? No, it's one of
it's
those.
the ultimate. So where does this rank? Like, where does this rank in terms of like excitement level, peak Star Wars, where like you're just all in? I mean, is this up there with like number one or top three moments? Because to me, it is.
I think it is a top three. I think this is easily a
Yeah.
top three, maybe even a top two.
It's top two for me. It's obviously the scene in Empire,
Yeah.
and then it's this. I would even go so the whole sequence in Empire, the fight
Oh,
leading
yeah.
up to
That's yeah,
the I am your father is I think my favorite, and then this is right up there. I mean,
yeah,
it's 1A and 1B to
yeah.
me
No,
almost.
that's a good way of putting it. Yeah,
Yeah,
this is easily a top two, just because there's just so much with it. It's not just a fight. Like
yeah.
it's the
There's
context,
so
it's the
much at
subtext.
stake. The fact that they were able to pull it off, it's almost like we've talked about Marvel a couple times. It's almost like Avengers Infinity War. Everything built up to that
To that
moment in
moment.
Infinity War, the way it nailed that movie, they just nailed this climax of this film. And it's there's a reason. It's when everyone thinks of this movie, they immediately go to this fight. At least I do. I immediately go to this battle.
Well, that's the thing, and it's
I mean, look at
them.
your poster,
Well,
right?
bingo!
Yeah.
Like it's that is the whole context of this
Hmm.
movie. That is it. That is the shot. Um, and again, we touched on it. I love that it was Ewan and Hayden doing it. It wasn't,
Yes.
I mean, that speaks such volumes to this fight, that it was then that they learned the choreography, that they were
Hmm.
the ones taking the hits and the swings. Like that just enhances the credibility and believability, but it also just like just as just an experience, like the fact that they were the ones doing it, it's just so cool.
It's so cool, and it's the reason why we still gush over it 20 years later.
Yeah.
If it was stunt doubles, we would have picked up on it by now, and it would have
Bingo.
been a little cheesy. But the fact that it is them the whole time,
Yeah.
it's like yeah, there's nothing takes you out of it. So it's brilliant, yeah. And I don't even have to say how it ties into New Hope,
Yeah.
and how when you watch New Hope after watching this, and you see their confrontation again, it just makes that fight, because that fight is not even a fight
Oh, it's
really
barely a
compared
fight.
to this,
Yeah.
but it elevates that
It
fight,
does.
because now you have an older Obi-Wan who is sacrificing himself to for Luke to take over, and it just brings it full circle. It's the moment that really brings it home with the Obi-Wan especially. And what do you think about the ending of this fight? I mean, and this is another contentious point where I have the high ground, and what was Anakin thinking, and what do you think about this? How do you kind of conceptualize this ending?
I think in many ways it does speak to Anakin's probably one of Anakin's main flaws, which is also his hubris. I mean, we've talked about the Jedi and their arrogance. Anakin does have his own arrogance because he's partially been led to believe that he is the chosen one. He has this sort of savior complex put on him by the Jedi. That is going to do something to you over
Yeah.
time. And now with everything that has happened to him, all the changes in his life, okay, I am a Sith. I've kind of exposed the traitors that the Jedi have turned out to be. I am more powerful than the Chancellor. I mean, he's saying all this earlier on, like he's believing his own mythic structure or mythic stature. It makes perfect sense that he would be brought down by his own arrogance in a way, just as kind of he's sort of foiled by his own arrogance in Empire Strikes Back, where he deludes himself into thinking there's no other possible solution or other possible answer but for Luke, my son, to join me. Like again, like when when Luke rejects him, like Vader is sort of caught off guard again. Like, what? How could this
Nobody
happen? Like,
rejects me. Yeah.
he would reject me. And again, I think this is the early seed of it. Like, I can take Obi-Wan. Like, come on, I'm Darth Vader. This is going to be easy. It's child's play, and
Mhm.
again, it's that arrogance that always comes back to bite you. So I never have an issue with it because I mean, obviously, it has to go a certain way because of the
Yeah.
story, and I think it works in a perfect way. I mean, again, the high ground has become a meme in its own right, but I just I don't know. I think it works in the context of the whole story. Like that's a perfect way as opposed to just like, oh, Obi-Wan, just got lucky with a quick swing of the lightsaber. It was a real method to it.
I believe it was Hayden Christensen who was asked this question, and I like his explanation. I think the best. He talks about how, Obi-Wan pulled this maneuver off on Darth Maul in episode
That's
one.
right. That's right.
And, I'm sure Anakin has heard the tale over and over again, the legend of Obi-Wan, flipping over Darth Maul, and, Darth Maul had the high ground, and he took him by surprise and he killed him. So that just plays in again to the jealousy. So
Yeah.
Anakin has all this jealousy and resentment towards Obi-Wan, and now you have this guy standing on this hilltop saying, it's over. Basically, I have the high ground. He's like, it's not over. Like I can do what you do, only better. I'm
Right.
going to show you. So I love that explanation, and yeah, of course, it just goes into the prophecy and him being built up his whole life, and all of that. He thinks he's untouchable, and I think there was really no other way to end it. I would have hated it if it was just Obi-Wan just overpowered him and maybe got lucky. I think this was beautifully done because it doesn't diminish Anakin's actual powers, because
Bingo.
Anakin is the chosen one, so he should beat Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
But he's not in the right state of mind, and I think that's why Obi-Wan gets the best of him because Obi-Wan is so centered and is so focused on what he has to do and his we didn't even talk about the dialogue that happens in the middle of this fight when they take a break and they're talking to each other. But during the fight, Obi-Wan eventually clears his mind and realizes, like, I have it's going to come down to I have to kill this guy and I have to
Right.
strike him down. So by the time we get to this scene, he is ready, he is focused, and Anakin is just so unhinged. So it makes complete sense. I would have hated it if they did it a different way.
Oh no, I can easily see it, in lesser hands they would have done something like, oh, Obi-Wan just got lucky, or the floor gave out or whatever. Like I appreciate that there was a real strategic effort to explain how does he end up in the suit. Is not
It
just
and yeah, I think it's good because it doesn't diminish
right,
Obi-Wan's abilities and flat out say that he got lucky because Anakin like tried to jump over him, but it does highlight the difference between the two of them. So because even so, I mean, as a kid, I root for Anakin. I mean, because Anakin's the chosen one. He's cool. He's eggy. He's Darth Vader. He's cool.
right.
I like to like root for different characters like that. So, but I don't feel cheated
No,
when
you don't.
when he gets got by Obi-Wan. So I think it does a good job of kind of playing both sides of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I suppose if you look at it in the larger context of it, it's the Force working its magic, if you will. Like, the prophecy is still active and still in motion.
Yeah.
But no, it's a well handled scene, and of course it does lead up to what is essentially the epilogue of this movie, because I mean this is really where everything is sort of brought into its natural state of
This
things.
is the bridge. Yeah.
Yeah,
This is
this is
yeah.
it. This is the connection between four and or between three and four, and I love how it is handled just the right way. Um, I guess originally George had debated Padme surviving this film, which would have meant her death would have taken place off screen. And I know for like people that say, story wise, with like the way Leia talks about her mother in episode 6, and it sort of implies that, her mother died when she was very young. I think for what had to be accomplished here, there was no other way for this story to end but for the way it does. It would have that would have felt like a cheat if Padme dies in between 3 and 4, and you're probably never going to see that, because I mean, again, you're thinking at the time this was the last film.
Yeah. I'm right on board with you. I can't even imagine a world where she survives. I
Yeah,
don't because if she's alive, that changes everything for Vader and for Anakin. And
yeah,
yeah, I don't know. That's weird. The biggest gripe I have with fandom for these prequels was the whole dying of a broken heart narrative. I hate that narrative. It was never true. It's not true today. I don't know how you conceptualize how she died. I like to think that Palpatine is siphoning her life force to give to Anakin so he can become Vader. That's my interpretation. Again, it will never really get clear answers on that.
mhm.
People have different interpretations, but the fact that people think she's like, oh, she's dying of a broken heart. I mean, come on. I would accept. I don't know if you accept the whole force choke is the reason. Maybe.
That's sort of where I come off on it,
Okay.
is that I think she was she was so badly injured. But I mean, again, if you see what a force choke does to somebody, I mean, you look at every time Vader pulls it in, episode, 4 or 5 or 6. I mean, that person is as good as dead, or is dead, and so I think that's probably more to it.
Okay.
Um,
I just think the fact that they didn't have her vitals were fine, and the robots or whatever, the ones delivering the babies were like, we don't know why she's dying. I think it's a callback to Plagueis and the fact that I think Palpatine is using her life force to pretty much revive Anakin and turn him into Vader in the suit.
I can accept that, particularly when you tie it to the back to the scene when Palpatine goes and collects him, and then he puts his hand on his head. Like, again, a lot of this, we're just sort of reading into it with our
Yeah.
own headcanon. But no, I could accept that. I mean, because like, would Padme willingly die knowing she's leaving behind her kids? Like, come on, like, no. I mean,
Yeah.
like, I mean, at this point, like, she saw what Anakin had become. Like, it wasn't like she did know what was going on, and then she had an accident or something. So I don't quite buy the the broken heart you know, uh,
Yeah.
theory of
Yeah.
things. I think there was a combination of the force choke, or like you said, there was some dark force stuff going on with Palpatine, and again,
I
I
think Palpatine's definitely involved because, especially in the original script, not to talk about too much about what's not in the movie again, but George had a scene where Palpatine reveals that he is Anakin's
yes,
father
yep.
and that he put the midichlorians in Shmi. So, I think that, he's involved somehow. I don't know.
Well, I think with the way he just sort of drops the bomb to him once he's in the suit that she's dead. Again, I think he's more behind everything. I mean, he's always behind everything. So
Yeah.
I think it would make perfect sense that
That he knew she
he,
was dead somehow.
yeah, he
Yeah.
would
Like, how
do
did he know unless he wasn't involved? Yeah.
exactly. And again, that's sort of my own theory about that's why he sent him off to Mustafar. Like,
Yeah.
he was gonna get rid of Padme one way or
Yeah.
the other. Fate just happened to
Oh
step
yeah,
in.
he need. You're right. The more I think about that, because he needed to get rid of his kids for sure,
Oh yeah, that's
especially because he knew Padme was pregnant somehow. Because he wouldn't have talked about, what's it called? He wouldn't have talked about Plagueis and all that.
oh
I mean,
no,
so he knew this whole
he
time that Padme was pregnant, which leads me to believe that he had a hand in it,
oh
and that he
exactly.
maybe planted the seed of twins and her dying at childbirth from the very beginning. Like she was always meant to die, and his visions were going to come true no matter what. So,
Oh
yeah.
no, and that's kind of the cool thing as well is that we don't have a definitive answer, and I
Yeah,
think
that's
that's
great. Yeah,
the
because we
beauty
can
of it.
have these discussions. Yeah, that's what I
Exactly.
love about film for
No,
sure.
because there's always a theory.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, this movie is. I hesitate. I mean, the word masterpiece is thrown around so much that it kind of loses its currency, and everybody, oh, this is a masterpiece, that's a masterpiece, or this is a travesty. But I really do feel like it is a perfect description for this film, particularly when you look at what this movie had to accomplish, and again, it tied together a prequel trilogy, but was also tying up a saga. I mean, that was not an easy feat to do, and again, there are critiques with it, but it's not enough to diminish it or take it away.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm there,
That's
but I
fair.
do like how you interpret that and saying it's a masterpiece in what it had to achieve,
Hmm.
and it did nail what it achieved, what it set out to achieve. So I will give you that. The movie itself, I'm not at that level.
That's fair.
Again, I do think it is thrown around a lot. Like Empire for me is that masterpiece,
Hmm.
and I think all the other movies are will never touch Empire, but that's just my bias.
No, that's fair.
So I see what you're saying though. I like how you say it, that how it's the execution of what it had to do and how it had to bridge the prequels with the original trilogy is masterful. So I understand why you would call it a masterpiece, but I don't know if I'm there. I'm just maybe a notch below it.
No, that's perfectly fair.
Yeah.
No, I get that. I get that. Um, do you have any favorite moments besides what we have talked about? In addition to, I'm guessing, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm guessing Anakin is your favorite character in this movie. And even if not, elaborate if you could just on Hayden's performance because if anything, I really do feel like there has been such a reappraisal of him and what he brought
Oh yeah.
to these two films. And I mean, just as an aside, at the start of this movie, before it starts, they recorded a intro for the film uh, with Hayden Christensen, just sort of introducing this is the 20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith. And I kid you not, the theater broke out into applause the minute he walked onto the screen. Like, say what you will, I know people have their issues with either his performance or the dialogue, but I wasn't picking up on any of that the other night at the theater. And for my own take, I've never had an issue with his performance. I think he works with what he's given, but it's also I look at it within the context of like the story and the world that's there, and everything makes sense if you kind of look through it that light. But yeah, I turn it back to you with the earlier two questions.
I never understood what the hate that he got. I always never had a problem. I can understand maybe an Attack of the Clones, people having an issue with it, but I don't either with
Mhm.
Attack of the Clones, but especially in episode 3. I mean, he really, really comes into his own. And I know he bulked up for this role, so his physical performance was different. I mean, his look, his facial expressions. I don't know. I never got the hate. I know he was kind of a scapegoat for
Mm.
the prequels. Him and Jar Jar were kind of the two figureheads of all the hate that was rained down. But I don't know. I mean, this, like we said before, this story was tailored for him,
Mhm.
and it's easy to say, well, the script was, working for him, but at the same time, you have to be that leading man, and I think he did a good job, especially in the second half of this movie where he really transitions. It's just so cool to see, and it's so believable.
Mhm.
It's because it is quick. I will
Yeah,
say. I mean, there is a lot of subtext if you look closely, but for maybe a more casual viewer that isn't like a huge Star Wars nerd that we are, it's a quick descent, and I think he handles it in his performance like so well when
Mhm.
he's conflicted in some of these scenes. It's so well. He is my favorite character. I mean, Darth Vader is my favorite villain of all time. So just by default, I'm gonna default to Anakin. But I do want to give a shout out. We really didn't touch on Ewan McGregor's
Mm.
performance as Obi-Wan. I mean, he is, in terms of all of the prequels, I think the heart and soul of these movies. I mean, he
Cosign.
carries a lot of these sequences. And Attack of the Clones, he's my favorite character by far in Attack of the Clones. And then in this movie, again, the ending monologue and the ending sequence is just so impactful. His line delivery is awesome. We talked about Ian McDermott. I would say it's almost a three-way tie between the three of them. They are just
Yeah,
putting on an acting showcase, and it's all about them. But yeah, Ewan McGregor, he's really good. Anakin's my favorite character, but my favorite performance in terms of line delivery might be Ewan McGregor at the end of this movie.
he's
He
really
he
good in this
he
film.
just sells it so well. Yeah.
And again, he's bridging the two films.
Yes. Yes. Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he's
I don't
he
know. It's hard. It's hard. There's so many good
I know.
performances. Because Ian McDermott, I mean, like I said, he deserved Oscars for that one
I
scene
I
alone.
kid you
So
not. No, it
yeah,
is a travesty that he was not at least nominated for something because it is it's my favorite performance of the Emperor in any of the Star Wars films. I just love it because it's such a layered performance,
yeah,
and then obviously when he has the mask off, so to speak. I mean, he's full on Darth Sidious. Like it's really fun to watch, and again, in lesser hands, it really could have been over the top and too much, but he finds that balance where it just works.
yeah. So what about you? Well, who's your favorite? Is it Palpatine?
I think for the context of the story, I really love what Palpatine is doing in this
Hmm.
film. But the other night, I was really drawn uh, just to Anakin and his story. Like just like again, even though I've seen this movie so many times, you still want him to do the right thing. Like like that moment with Mace Windu. It's like, don't come on, Anakin, don't put the lightsaber down. Like you feel yourself almost ready to scream at the screen. But yeah, it's probably a combination of both Palpatine and Anakin. I mean, they're really the twisted souls, if you will, of this movie, and it's really a nice compliment, particularly in their scenes where there's just the subtle manipulation going on.
Yeah, they match the tone to this movie and the themes in this movie
Yeah,
so brilliantly. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. This is such a rewatchable movie, and I think you really hit the nail on the head perfectly because you pick up so much on each new watch. I mean, again, I feel like I need to go watch it again right now
I
just
know
to
it's
like,
loaded with so much
yeah,
stuff.
just
I
to
know.
just like freeze frame different moments, but. I mean, we could go on literally for another hour or 2 hours on this movie. Like, I mean, there's just so much to unpack. I mean, at some point, I'll probably have to do a commentary episode and just like
Yeah.
really deep dive in it. But um, before, I guess, I mean, at this point, before I, put a bow on this or put a lightsaber through it, Nolan, any final thoughts, comments on Revenge of the Sith?
Yeah, I mean, we could pretty much covered, a lot, but just my final thoughts are, again, this isn't may not be, if you scrutinize this movie in and of itself, a perfect film. You could have some questionable choices here and there, and with characters, but in terms of the achievement of George Lucas and him bridging the gap, and this is the final movie that he directed and kind of brought into the saga. It's you just sit back as a Star Wars fan, and this is what I mean. This is a lot of what we love about Star Wars. We get the original trilogy, and that's always going to hold a special place. But when we think about the Jedi and the Jedi Council and Yoda and all of these different pieces at play, and the Emperor. The Emperor in the original trilogy is great, but like you said, Ian McDermott just takes it to a whole new level. I mean, this is who I think of when I think of the Emperor. So this is, in a lot of sense, it may not be a masterpiece, but in terms of Star Wars, it's fucking damn good, man. And it's such a treat to watch back. It's like I said, it's the most rewatchable of all of the films, I think. And it's great to watch with the original trilogy. It elevates the original trilogy. I think he did a good job of kind of, explaining, the backstory, but not explaining too much. There's some plot holes that arise that you're always going to have when you start with episode four,
Right.
but that can be completely overlooked because the cinematography, the aesthetic, the different planets, the grandiose of this story, and everything. I mean, we didn't even talk about the Jedi Temple. Like, the shots of the Jedi Temple in this film are awesome. It's so cool to see kind of the Jedi in their heyday before everything goes to shit. I just love this movie. Like I said, it's number 3 on my list, and it could be higher if it wasn't for A New Hope and Empire, but those will always be my 1 and 2 just because of personal bias and nostalgia. But this is as good as it gets in terms of like Star Wars, Jedi,
Mhm.
which is what I love. I love Rogue One. I love Andor, the series, but my heart lies with Jedi and lies with Vader and this Skywalker saga. So I'm always going to default back to these movies.
I mean, that's where I'm at. To me, as much as there have been a lot of great Star Wars stories that take place outside of the sort of the Jedi Sith conflict, to me, that is Star Wars. It's Anakin, it's the Skywalkers, like that is the whole point of it. And I mean, I'll even go as a step to say like this was peak Star Wars in 2005, and I some people may have an issue with this. We haven't gotten it as good as we did 20 years ago, and I know we've had a number of different shows and movies, but I mean, to me, this was the turning point, and Star Wars has never reclaimed that in the 20 years follows. It may happen someday, but
Yeah.
right now this is the benchmark for at the very least modern Star Wars. I have to ask you because it is sort of top of mind. We are getting a new Star Wars movie, I guess, in 2027.
Yeah.
Star Wars Starfighter, starring Ryan Gosling, from director Sean Levy. Um, do you have any thoughts on that at this particular time?
No, I
No.
don't know. I don't. It's one of those, like, I'm not gonna hold my breath. I'm
Yeah.
gonna wait until we get a trailer, and
Right.
I'm be excited. But it's been so long, like you said, without Star Wars on the big screen. It's going to be another 2 years. I know Favreau and Filoni are doing a movie. I think
All
Favreau's
right.
directing
The
the
Mandalorian.
Mandalorian
Yeah.
movie, which again is cool. I love the Mandalorian, but to
Same.
me, it's like I want my Jedi.
I
I
know.
don't know. Maybe I'm just a simple guy, and I love Andor, and I love these other stories, like you said. But to me, Star Wars is this constant struggle between the Sith and the Jedi, and that it's always going to be that. So, Starfighter, I think it takes place right after the prequels, right? It's like another bridge movie that they're
After
doing.
Episode
Correct?
9, yeah.
Oh, it
Yeah,
is.
it's
It's
after the
after episode
sequels.
9.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm getting confused with another project that they're doing. So this is going to be post
Post Rise of
Rise.
Skywalker,
Okay,
yeah.
so we'll see if they make any appearances
References.
those characters. Yeah, we'll see if Ray is Ray still getting a movie, another movie? Is that still on the
I
table?
think
What's going on with
that's. I
that?
mean, it has not been canceled as far as I know, but
Click on
I
it.
know
Yeah,
it's not in
in limbo.
active development because I mean I
Okay,
think it was originally supposed to come out next
it
year.
was supposed to be the first one, right? Coming out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that
So
obviously hasn't happened. I mean,
okay.
there's been a lot of Star Wars movies that have been announced, but then they
Yeah.
never go anywhere.
What
So
like overall, like what direction would you like to see Star Wars go? Do you want them to piggyback off the sequels, or do you want them to go back in time, or just start fresh with like maybe a time jump and just start with brand new characters? Like where do you see Star Wars going, or where do you want it to go?
So if I were in charge of Lucasfilm, number one, I would stop all Disney Plus projects immediately. Um,
Cease and
just
desist.
shut
Yeah.
them down. All projects shut down immediately.
Okay.
Um, I would keep Star Wars on the big screen because I think there was just something about seeing these movies in that setting that you can't recapture on a TV or computer or what have you. I would honestly go back in time.
I would too.
I would, now to what end? Is it Knights of the Old Republic? Maybe, but I would go as far back as possible. I'm not talking like 20, 30 years before the Phantom Menace. Like we are going way, way back. Like give me the origin of the Jedi and the Sith. I mean, I know there was talk of a
There was
movie.
talk, yeah.
I don't know if the James Mangold movie is going to happen, if it's still happening, but that would be my preference. Go way back because then you can tell new stories, introduce new characters without having the issue of either, well, this conflicts with canon or plot
Yeah.
holes, and it just sort of separates things.
I agree. I think I would go back. I think there's so much to tell. I think they tried that with the Acolyte, with the High Republic. I think it was not executed great. I don't think it
Yeah.
was a great story.
No.
The fighting was great, so I like that. But I'm not surprised it was canceled. But
No.
I think it was canceled because it got a lot of hate because people care a lot still, and they want to see that era of Jedi and the High Republic, and maybe even Knights of the Old Republic. Take a page from the video games. I think
Right.
that would be, I think, the best way to go. I don't know. I think you should either do that or go like way in the future. I think we
Right.
need completely new characters, new Jedi. Like this Skywalker saga is done. Let's move on. I don't need more Ray.
No.
I actually like Ray as a character, but I don't need more of that. I mean, she's done. Palpatine
Stop.
somehow should
Yeah.
not come
No.
back. Yeah,
I don't want to see it.
please
No.
stop. Yeah,
No.
exactly. So let's do something
Yeah.
completely new. This Starfighter is going to take place right after 9, so I'm sure there's going to be more connections. I don't know. It's like just another side story that we're going to get. I'm sure it'll be fine, and I'll go see it in theaters. But I want that, like you said, I want like a reset where they
Yeah.
just stop all production of shows. I'm kind of on board with that. Take a couple years and come back with a bang in a whole new era.
Again, there is no reason for Star Wars to feel like a tired franchise at this point. But that's kind of how it feels, at least to me,
A
that
little
it's sort
bit,
of
yeah.
it's overstayed its welcome. And again, I think that was the genius behind George Lucas. He knew. I mean, obviously there was a method, there was a story he was telling, but he knew just how long to take a break and to kind of keep things fresh and interesting, as opposed to like, all right, here's a new show and here's a new movie. Like you can oversaturate the market and it lose its its irrelevancy in a way where it just becomes kind of background noise.
Yeah, I agree. And I like some of the shows. I'm not like I
Oh
enjoyed
no, yeah,
Ahsoka. I like
yeah,
this, I liked parts of the shows, but you know, let's get it back to the big screen. I
yeah.
agree.
No, enough is enough. Yeah, we'll have a whole other episode on that
Yeah.
someday. Well, Nolan, thank you for joining me on this special Star Wars centric episode. This is becoming kind of a tradition now, so we'll have to have you back next year and talk some more Star Wars movies. But in the meantime, where can folks follow you? And please give a plug for your show.
No, of course. Again, thanks so much, Phil. I would love to come back next year. I love talking Star Wars. So anytime you'll have me, I will talk about Star Wars, the good, the bad, and the ugly too. So bring me on for the talking about the shows. I'll do whatever. So thanks so much again. This was a great discussion. Yeah, you can find me if you want to follow me on Twitter or X. I'm at Movie Nolo. That's at Movie Nolo, and I run the Never Split Up podcast with my best friend Anthony, and it's a horror podcast dedicated to all things horror. We do movie reviews, we do rankings, franchise rankings, everything. We're currently talking about Final Destination. We're doing those reviews. For the new Final Destination movie coming out. So check us out at Never Split Up Pod on social media. We're on Instagram and we're on X as well. And we're also on YouTube. So give us a subscribe on YouTube. I'm sure Phil will have this in the notes. But yeah, I appreciate you having me on, Phil, and can't wait for next time.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Nolan. And again, I give a plug for their show. They really do a great job with all things horror movie related. So if that is your cup of tea, I would encourage you to give them a like and a follow because you guys do outstanding stuff. And I always enjoy listening to your show and
Thank you.
looking
Thank you,
forward to
sir.
what you guys have cooking up later this year. I know this has been a good year for horror movies, and we're only in April, so
Yeah.
definitely looking forward to seeing what the rest of the year brings. But on that note, everybody, thank you as always for tuning in each and every Friday. This was a long episode, but I think it was worth it given the passion that we both have for this film and this particular franchise. But that will do it for me today, everybody. Thank you again to Nolan, and I will be back next week where we will do this all over again for the love of movies.
At the movies makes every movie